Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Let Us Head Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Was Heir of Westwin Empire. Now before starting, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku was born on a night with a cool breeze blowing through the air. The hospital where his parents were located had just gotten attacked by a terrorist attack, and the young Izuku was lost from his parents' arms that night. The thing though was that his parents were not your average individuals in the world. World history did not go as one would think in a traditional world. In this world, there was still one great empire that ruled through a loving and kind family. This empire expanded across the entire South American continent and was ruled by the descendants of the royal family known as Westwin. This royal family led the empire to become far more technologically advanced than the rest of the world and is the leading authority in many different fields. While the rest of the world was having problems due to quirks, the empire passed laws preventing discrimination against people with or without quirks. As such, it did not have a rough period like the rest of the world, which allowed the country to pull even further in its technological advances. The empire was saddened by the news when they heard the young prince was lost, but were relieved to find out that he was still alive. The royal family had a method of knowing if their kin was still alive or not. This was due to an old technological creation that the royal family had made that placed a seal on the unborn child. This seal contained all of the basic information of the family and ancestral knowledge that was passed down from the family line. Once the seal was placed on the parent of the child, the seal automatically passed to the unborn child during pregnancy. This allowed them to know if the child was still living if they were not secured at the palace. As such, the royal family never gave up hope and had sent their agents across the world trying to find their child, since the terrorist's quirk caused the child to be teleported away. The empire did not fall into civil unrest like much of the world though, since the royal family had no current heir. This was due to the fact that the empire knew rough times from its past and had created many systems to continue the empire even in the event that the royal family died out. This was due to an amazing council system that acted like a congress that represented all the regions of the empire. They would meet at all times to continue progressing the empire. To keep the council from becoming corrupt, term limits were put into place and no one could break them due to it being set by the royal family. The council members also had to have their entire lives public in regards to their financial information or business deals. This was to ensure they were not being paid off by others to act in a different manner than what's in the public interest. There are many other methods that kept the council from being corrupted as well, but this also applied to the royal family. They themselves declared all business deals that they made personally or that the family itself made to the council so that the people could ensure that they did not abuse their power. This system allowed the country to continue with checks and balances between the two branches and has had seldom disputes that had involved the third branch of the government, which was the court system. Each region had its own local court system, but there was also a national court that would deal with any matters that rose to the highest levels, and they have only made very few decisions. As such, they spend most of their time rotating in the courts of the different regions until they are called upon. This government system with all the transparency allowed the country to stay stable even with the disturbing news of the lost heir, since the queen could no longer bear children. The royal family bloodline was a unique one as well. The king this time wasn't actually the one born into the family but had married into it, since the queen was an only child. However, only the one born into the blood would be the direct ruler, since they are the ones that carry the unique bloodline. The ones that marry in would act as a supporting role in ruling the country but would still play an important role. The special thing about the family bloodline was that even a male child could give birth due to the family's bloodline. This bloodline allowed the direct male heirs to bear children if they found love with another male. No one knows how it happens or if it was the effect of a quirk long ago before the dawn of quirks itself, but this was always a unique trait that the males born into the family would bear even if they weren't the heir. This is what saved the royal family once, when around 5 generations ago the ruling family had died out due to an assassination on the family, but the second-born male child was still alive and carried the blood of the family. However, he was openly gay, but the bloodline of the royal family allowed him to bear a child with his lover and continue the direct bloodline of the royal family. As such, the public always kept their eyes open in the event that the royal heir was found by luck, but it would be years later that they would find the heir, and the world would have shockwaves spread across it, for the heir would lead the empire to a higher level of greatness. This is the story of Izuku Westwin, who was found in Japan and returned to his homeland once the seal was broken. Is heartbroken by those that betrayed him and treated him horribly, but would go on to become a powerful leader of his empire and unlock his family's quirk through the royal family ritual that had sealed it in the first place to keep him alive due to its power. Third POV. Izuku was an orphan boy from a young age. He was actually given the last name of Midoriya from the caretaker at the orphanage due to the color of his hair. The lady was not that old, but she wasn't young either. She said that Izuku's hair made her think of a green valley, therefore she gave him the last name Midoriya to hopefully help him get adopted, since Midoriya meant Green Valley. Sadly for Izuku, the nice lady of the orphanage couldn't change fate. She couldn't make him born with a quirk or change the word of quirkless from being applied to Izuku. Japan wasn't a country that treated the quirkless kindly since they were looked down upon and thought of as inferior. What is worst is the fact that this nice lady would die when Izuku was in middle school. Izuku was so sad to return to the orphanage that day and learn that she had passed in her sleep. He was told that her heart had given out and that it had always been bad and that one day this would have happened. Unlikely for Izuku, he didn't get to tell her about getting a quirk. She didn't get to hear about how he met All Might a handful of months ago and have been training under him. Nor would she get to see Izuku use the could he could now use, though using it broke his bones currently. Izuku always regretted not being able to tell her about it or showing her. The last month of summer break was stressful for Izuku. He now had a quirk, but he no longer had the nice lady there for him. The new take-carers of the orphanage weren't as good as the nice lady was. Izuku remembered how she wouldn't look at Izuku any differently from the quirk children, but these two ones would. Unknown to them that he now had a new quirk. Izuku needed to get the quirk registered. As such, he needed to show the quirk off. During the dinner in the house, he accidentally activated it for a few seconds, which caught everyone's attention. They all freaked out. Izuku just made small comments about him being a late bloomer and he finally had a quirk. Everyone was still stunned but couldn't really argue against what they just saw themselves. As such, the caretakers took their new quirk kid and got him registered with the government as having a quirk called Superpower that granted him exchange strength. Everyone in the orphanage was still confused, but it didn't matter. Now Izuku had his quirk registered. He also kept training with All Might, trying to get some form of control since he only had a month left for school. Soon though, this month would pass and he would start his first semester at UA. Unknown to Izuku though is that his first year would be filled with a lot of challenges and trials to overcome. One such challenge was the USJ, where he broke several bones again, even though he discovered a method of controlling his quirk by what he dubbed as the full cow mode. Izuku still broke his arm since he wasn't used to it and tried to stop a creature strong enough to end All Might. The next challenge Izuku would face would be his finals, where he would be paired up with Bakugo, who has always hated Izuku for being an orphanage and quirkless. The exam was rough and Bakugo had even attacked him during the final, yet he wasn't called on it by the teachers. Izuku thought UA was meant to be different, but Kaken always got protected. Izuku was just glad the end of the semester was here, though he would have to go through a few more trials. One trial being chalked out by a crazed villain who wanted him dead for getting in his way all the time. As such, Izuku had the life of him almost choked out of himself at the mall when he was getting gear for the trip. His friends had left him alone to go get their own things. Izuku was just glad he at least had some friends to talk to during his high school life, since most just hated him or avoided him in the past. As Izuku was thinking this, the camp was attacked by guess who? The League of Villains. Izuku ended up breaking a lot of his bones that night by defending Koda from a villain known as Muscular, who wanted to end Koda and just go on a bloody ending spree. The night ended with Bakugo being kidnapped and taken by the League of Villains. Overall, the night ended in a disaster that UA got attacked hard in the media. However, while the heroes were planning to go save Bakugo, there was another rescue plan being made by the students and Izuku agreed to go. He didn't really want to save Bakugo himself, but he wanted to ensure his friends didn't get ended. The night ended with All Might having his skinny form revealed to the world and Bakugo being saved. The main villain, known as All For One, was arrested and sent to prison, but the other League members escaped from capture and were on the run. This will come into play later, likely in the far future of the story. As such, the nation still had to be on guard. UA soon created a dorm system to help better protect the students from outside threats. However, unknown to the students and the public, the school was searching for a mole still. They had a belief that someone was feeding the League information the entire time that allowed them to do so many attacks without any problems. As such, when the staff and students started living on campus, they were being watched at all times. Soon, the work studies began as the students, for the most part, all passed their provisional exams and would be out on the field working with heroes that would take them. One hero, in particular, took on Izuku Midoriya aka the hero Deku. This hero was Sir Night-Eye, whose sole purpose for taking Izuku on was to ridicule him and convince him of giving up One For All to Sir Night-Eye's choice Lemillion, who Sir Night-Eye believed to be a better fit for the 9th user of One For All. This caused a strain on Izuku's already fragile confidence levels, since he was always bullied and looked down upon for being quirkless. Having Sir Night-Eye, the man who was meant to be his mentor during his work study, put him down as he did was hurtful. Soon though, the work study took a drastic turn. Izuku now faced a far larger challenge and had to save a girl called Eri from the Japanese mafia, who were using her blood to make quirk-destroying bullets. Izuku did have Eri in his hands at one point, but had to let her go since she went back to the villain leader, which made Izuku feel so much regret. The mission was decided on when they would save Eri, and it commenced only 1 week later. It was currently the middle of their second semester as this raid was going on. Izuku and everyone else put a lot of work into the raid, and it was successful for the most part. They had saved Eri but had lost Sir Night-Eye. Izuku didn't know how to feel about that. He did cry, but he also didn't feel too much sadness since Sir Night-Eye was so cruel to him. Soon time passed and the summer festival happened, and they had put a show on for the school and were able to make Eri smile. This made Izuku so happy when they were able to get her to smile. Soon weeks passed and everything returned to normal. Though one day that changed, and it would change Izuku's life forever. As Izuku woke up one day a bit late, he quickly got changed and made his way to class. Though he noticed that none of his classmates were still in the dorms and everyone was already cleared in the halls, Izuku got close to his classroom and then heard talking from inside that made him frenzy. "Did you guys hear? Izuku was the UA traitor," stated a voice that sounded like Uraraka. Some dismissed this statement while others confirmed that they heard it as well. Others were talking about how creepy Izuku has always been and that it wouldn't be strange for him to be the mole. They even mentioned his notebook that he kept notes in and how he could be selling it to the villains. That doesn't even make logical sense. If I was the mole, everyone would be dead due to the detailed information I have in those notebooks, Izuku thought. Izuku then opened the door quickly and looked at everyone with tears down his face. "You all really believe I would betray you after everything that has happened?" Izuku stated. No one answered him. Even Bakugo refused to. Then Izuku felt fabric around him and knew it was his teacher. He turned his head and saw Aizawa-sensei, Principal Nezu, and his mentor All Might. Nezu started to talk with a bit of a cold tone. "Izuku Midori, you are under arrest for betraying Hero Society and providing information to the League of Villains," Nezu stated, and Izuku demanded proof of this. Nezu then pulled up a video that showed Izuku digging into files while wearing his hero outfit, and it showed him taking files and leaving UA campus. Nothing more and nothing less. That is all they have. My face isn't even seen in the video, Izuku thought. He looked at his master, who had a face full of pity. Izuku was stunned. His own master didn't believe him. "All Might, you can't really believe this. Not after everything?" Izuku asked, and All Might just shook his head. "I was blind by my own thoughts. Too many things lineups, like the fact that you have extensive knowledge of quirks for someone untrained for it. You have had meetings with the leader of the league, which could have been fake attacks on you, like the mall, for example, could have been staged to provide cover for the camp attack. You were alone for a portion of the time at the camp and came back after fighting Muscular. You could have communicated with some of the members during that period. I'm sorry, but I don't know what to believe at this point," All Might stated. Izuku was heartbroken. His master that he had placed his trust in had just betrayed him. Some of the classmates started to throw insults and accusing him of working with the villains and trying to get them ended. Though, there were some that didn't believe it and asked the teachers to look into it more before passing judgment. These people that talked in that manner were Takoyami, Shoji, Koda, and Aoyama. The others were making comments or just didn't look at Izuku at all. Izuku felt betrayed by them as well. Especially Ida, Uraraka, Todoroki, Tsu, Minta, and Bakugo, since he had helped save each one of them at least once during his time at UA. Izuku could only stay silent as he was dragged away by the staff and taken to the principal's office. In the office was Mirio waiting for them, and he looked sad. As they let go of him for a second, Aizawa stepped out of the door for a moment. All Might then spoke. "I want you to transfer One for All to Mirio. I think I made a mistake of choosing you as the 9th, and maybe Sir Night-Eye was right since you are having so much trouble even using it," All Might stated, and Izuku's heart broke even more. Izuku looked up at him and talked. "You were meant to be my master, yet you betray me like this. As a master, you should have absolute faith in me, and yet with so little proof, you abandoned me. I hope you never come to regret this day, since I won't forgive you," Izuku said as he pulled a strand of hair. Even though he wanted to keep it, Izuku couldn't condemn people's lives that could be saved with it. "Mirio, is this what you want? To take One for All from me?" Izuku asked, and Mirio just nodded his head. "It's what Sir Night-Eye wanted of me," he stated, and Izuku just shook his head. "Just know, you are never going to be the true 9th wielder. Make sure to pass this day down when you find the next user and mention how you are a false holder of One for All. I am only giving it up since I can't bear to condemn those that could be saved with One for All to death, otherwise you would have never gotten it from me," Izuku said as he gave Mirio the hair to eat. Izuku felt One for All leave his body, and he believed he could hear the voices of One for All cry out in protest and anger at the transfer. "You are our true 9th user. One day we will meet again, number 9, whispered a voice in Izuku's head. Izuku felt tears go down his face. The room was silent until Nezu started to speak. "It's time for you to go. You will be transported to prison. You would have gone to Tartarus, but since you are now quirkless, that isn't needed, and you will be held in a low-security prison," stated Nezu. Aizawa was called back in, and Izuku was escorted out to a police car. "I guess I don't get a trial?" Izuku asked, and Nezu said no. "There are special laws that allow traitorous heroes to be imprisoned without trial if there is proof. We also don't want this hitting the media, since it would be another scandal for UA," Nezu stated. Izuku just kept crying. He was going to be imprisoned. What a cruel joke. He who always wanted to be a hero was now going to be a prisoner and called a villain for something he didn't do. Izuku was just silent the entire trip outside until they reached the car. Just know this. The day will come where I will be proven innocent, and my question will be, how will you undo your wrongs and all of the time wasted? Izuku said as he got into the car. Soon the door closed and the police car pulled away from UA. The teachers went back into the building, and they believed that it would be the last they have seen of Izuku Midori. Though fate has many different and mystic ways of working, and they would one day meet him again, and it will be on different playing fields. Izuku was sitting in the car listening to the music that was on the radio as he thought about his now destroyed future. He just laughed bitterly at how he was a rising star and now a discarded one. The cops in the front just banged on the cage behind them, telling him to shut up. They said they would arrive at the prison in 40 minutes and to keep quiet. However, unknown to them all, they would never make it to the prison with Izuku Midori. This was due to a villain attack that a hero would purse right into them, which would cause their car to go flying off the road and breaking the police car door open. Boom went the sound as the police car collided with some massive object. There were screams from Izuku and the 2 police officers who were in the car. The car was flipped onto its roof and went sliding across the street and into a ditch near the road. Izuku soon gained his bearings and looked around and noticed that one cop was awake while the other was out cold from the airbag hitting him. Izuku saw that his door had been busted open due to the crash, and Izuku had many thoughts in his mind at that moment. One was to run. They betrayed me, and they can't think I would just stay and accept a false charge when they barely have any proof. Izuku thought as his analytical mind kicked in. He relied on one for all too much and stopped using his mind when he got a quirk. Izuku adjusted himself and kicked the door open, which caught the attention of the other cop who was currently stuck. The cop started to shout for Izuku to stop as he called the incident in on the radio and that the person in his car was escaping. Izuku kicked again and the door came fully open enough for him to escape. The police didn't put him into the seatbelt since they thought he was going to be easy, since they were informed of him being quirkless. They looked down on him and provided him means to escape. This is because the cuffs were not the harder and bigger quirk-canceling cuffs, but older cuffs that could be slipped under the feet due to them being on a metal chain between the cuff portions on his wrist. As such, his hands were now in front of him, which allowed Izuku to crawl out of the car and start to run, since the hero that was dealing with the villain was still busy and didn't know there was a prisoner in the car. This was how one Izuku Midori, an orphan kid, escaped out of police custody and became a wanted man in Japan. Though Izuku would also learn that it was also fated that he would run into a group of people that would help Izuku return where he belonged to, his home and family. Third POV. Nighttime has arrived and Izuku was still on the run. He knew the moment he escaped from that car he was going to be on the run for the rest of his life. Though, he didn't regret it. He refused to regret it when everyone had betrayed him over so little proof. Izuku knew he needed to find somewhere to stay for the night and find some scraps to eat. Izuku had gotten the cuffs off, though it did hurt his hands and wrists quite a bit. He first used leverage to break the middle chain by applying his body weight against the chain, which he put on the other side of a metal pole, and snapped the chain. The cuffs were a bit old, so it happened, but only after a bit of work, which strained his wrists quite a bit. He then worked on getting his hands out of the cuffs themselves, since people would ask about them. He soon found a paperclip in the trash in an alley and started lockpicking the handcuffs. He had decided to break the middle section first, since it would have caught too much attention by the way he held himself. Now he can hide his hands in his school uniform, which he really needs to get rid of. After about 10 minutes of working on the cuffs, he was able to get them off of his hands. Once that happened, he threw them away and started to search for different clothing. He saw a homeless man on the street and traded his clothing, since his clothing was made of a bit heavier material that would keep the man warm. Izuku needed different clothing regardless of warmth, since it would get him caught if he kept it. After trading the top jacket portions, Izuku dirted his pants up so they looked old and not clean and newer, so he would blend in better on the street. After accomplishing that, he started to get a move on it. As he walked past a store with a few TVs in the window, he saw his picture. The police had put out a wanted poster for him detailing his crimes and the fact that he escaped. Guess I left you no choice but to get bad press, Nezu. Hope you have fun with it, thought Nezu. Izuku then got moving again, since he knew he couldn't stay in the same place. Staying still means capture. Capture means prison, and well, he is not going back to prison. Izuku knew he didn't want to harm people, but he would do what he needed to survive in this world now that it had betrayed him. One day he would prove that he is innocent and clean his name, but for now, he needed to plan and survive, just like he has always had to do in this world. Izuku soon made it to a more crime-infested portion of the city where criminals and low-lives hang out and do criminal deals. Izuku would need to stay here and try to thrive in their world, since he couldn't operate in the other portions of the city. Izuku made his way down an alleyway street and saw a criminal deal after a criminal deal be made by criminals on the street. Izuku just ignored it, regardless of how much he wished he could put a stop to the crimes. He was no longer a hero, and no one was in direct danger that Izuku was going to risk himself over someone buying drugs. As such, he just kept moving. Soon, he arrived in a shady building that, through his training and hero work study, that he came to learn that this was a place that info brokers would come to. They would buy and sell information or things that people needed. Most heroes ignored it since they also used the info brokers to get information on criminals. Izuku entered the building and moved to a table in the back where those looking to buy and sell would sit. After waiting 5 minutes, a man came up to him. The man that came up and sat down was none other than Jiren. Jiren was one of the top info brokers in Japan and was good at hiding himself. Overall, not much was known about him except that he is knowledgeable about current trends and is also great at scouting potential villains. He also successfully deals with illegal, especially with the growing underground popularity of the League of Villains. You are new here. I don't recognize your build or the way you carry yourself, young man, so why are you here? Grain asked with his trademark grin on. Izuku just raised his head enough for him to be seen. You should know why I'm out and about, Grain. I am on the run from the law now due to the League, who I know framed me as a mole. Though, I can't really hold that against them since UA bought it with so little evidence indicating it was me and had enough evidence to suggest otherwise, Izuku said, and Grain's eyes widened when he saw who it was. Jiren just surveyed Izuku and was silent for a few moments. What is it that you want? Jiren asked. Izuku looked at him in the eye and started to speak. I want a place to lay low at and to sell information. I need to make a living and I'm good at analyzing quirks and other things. It was ironic that fact was used against me when UA arrested me though, Izuku stated. Jiren just thought for a few moments and nodded his head. I need proof of your ability. Otherwise, I don't know how to value your business to other clients that may wish to purchase your services. Once you can provide that, I can offer you a safe house payment free for 1 month, and then after that, I will require a percentage of your services to cover the cost of the house, food, utilities, and the agreement to not sell your information to others. Deal? Jiren stated. Izuku nodded his head and said the percentage would be negotiated at the time of the 1 month mark, and anything he earned before then would be no cuts removed. Jiren agreed with the deal since Izuku was proving to be a good deal maker, and Jiren has heard the word of Izuku's ability to analyze in fights and wondered if he could apply it to other things. Izuku then asked for some paper and pens, and Jiren provided it while being confused a bit until he saw Izuku getting to work. Izuku in 10 minutes had provided an overview of the main members of the League's quirks and how to defeat them. Jiren's eyes widened a bit at this information. I can also do strengths and how to improve them and train weaknesses away if they can be. I can also do theories for quirk applications as well, though that information will cost more. This is more just proof of concept of my work, Izuku stated. He wasn't really willing to do information on heroes at the moment but had no regrets doing it on villains. Jiren looked the information over and it was good information. He agreed that he would start scouting out clients for Izuku, and he then lead Izuku to a safe house that was 10 minutes away. He provided Izuku with a burner phone that had his contact information saved in it. I'll be in contact in roughly a week. I've just recently stocked this house about 2 days ago, so all the food should be good still. If any isn't and you really need something, then text me what it is. Otherwise, I restock the safe houses every 2 weeks since there is enough food to last 2.5 weeks, Jiren stated before leaving. Izuku went into the home and settled down. This is my life now. Effing damn it, Izuku said as he started to break down. He hasn't had any time to break down until now. He just broke down quickly and quietly so he didn't attract attention from outside. He still had to be cautious of everything even though he had a safe house now. He wasn't going to trust Jiren outright and would need to be ready to leave whenever he needed to. Izuku quickly took a bath since he found a range of different sizes of clothing in the bedroom closet. At least he plans for everything and anything, Izuku stated to no one. Soon Izuku spent his time practicing his analysis abilities in preparation for work from new clients. After about 1 week, Jiren returned. He stated that he had a handful of clients that wanted basic work done on rival gangs. They had provided videos as long as they could of the other side using their quirks. As such, Izuku got to work, and 2 days later he was finished with everything and traded the information to Jiren, who delivered it. Another 3 days later, Jiren returned with an envelope full of money. Good job, kid. The information was well received and the gang took control of their opponent's territory without much of a fight. They delivered the agreed amount that I asked for, and you now have 500,000 yen. Jiren stated since Izuku's work was one of the best in the analysis field. Jiren knew that Izuku would be a large moneymaker for him and would help protect his whereabouts since Jiren had some standards. This work contained for 2 entire months, as Izuku would do analysis work for rival gangs and villain groups that wanted to take over other occupied areas. Izuku made an ending on the work. He would make around 300,000 to 500,000 yen per deal, and after 2 entire months of it had around $60,000 USD saved up, which was around 5,150,000 yen. Jiren took about $500 USD per deal, which was a bit of money but also not a lot with how much Izuku was making. Izuku was playing to start taking steps towards clearing his name when one day Jiren called out of normal and yelled for him to grab his shit and run. The hero somehow figured out the specific area you are in. You need to leave now. When you are sure you are far away and safe, then contact me and I will set up a new safe house. But don't try to reach out until you are far away and are sure you aren't being followed, since if they get me you are also screwed on finding someone to hide you, since I'm the best at it and it took them 2 months to find you," Jiren yelled. Izuku was already moving and getting everything. However, while Izuku was running around in a rush, there was another group of people not connected to the events that were going on that Izuku would have an encounter with. This group was a group of special agents that were preparing to leave the Great Western Empire Embassy in Japan and head towards the port to board their nation's military ship that would be ready to leave dock once they arrived. These agents had been in Japan for a few weeks to help train some Japanese heroes in more hidden movements and hideout raiding. The Empire did not have a traditional hero system like other countries or like Japan. Instead, they had a special force called the Empire Guards that worked similar to heroes who dealt with more internal matters alongside the police. The Empire Guards was just a special branch of the police that was far more heavily trained than normal police officers, instead of being separate and being a part of the entertainment industry like it is in Japan. Outside of the Empire Guards, the police, and the military, there was also one more group, which was the Imperial Guards. The Imperial Guards was a branch of the military who served and guarded the royal family and went wherever they went. They were also heavily trained and are rumored to be able to fight a high-level villain on their own to ensure the protection of the royal family due to the sheer amount of training they go through. Now, the Empire Guard agents also leave the country to do special training with other countries' heroes to help keep relations stable and friendly. Normally, they would just fly out of the country on a plane, but they were going to ride the military transport back to their homeland since it had been scheduled to pass by Japan with one of the main fleets that were returning from an international patrol mission. However, unknown to them, it would become a historical day for their empire. As the guards were leaving the embassy, Izuku was also leaving the safe house and was now on the run again. He was lucky that Jiren called when he did, because once he had gotten about a block and a half from the house, he heard police sirens go down the block where the house was, and a handful of heroes stormed the house. As such, Izuku ducked into an alleyway and started to run as far as he could. After about 15 minutes of running, he came to a crossroad. And as soon as he went to the other side of the road, a handful of black sedans drove past him. Izuku didn't know, but at that moment inside one of the sedans was an agent with a special ring. This Empire Guard was a part of a long-standing mission. The mission was to find and retrieve the lost prince of the Empire. The moment they passed within 30 feet of Izuku, the ring started to heat up lightly, causing pain to the agent. He hissed a bit in pain and looked at what was causing the pain. His eyes widened. "It can't be," he thought. He yelled for the car to stop, which confused everyone. "Stop the damn car now," he yelled. The cars came to a stop on the side of the road. He got out and looked around. The ring wasn't burning anymore. The other Empire Guards got out and asked him what was wrong. The ring started to burn. These rings are special as they are connected to the royal seal to find any royal family member within 30 feet of the wearer. These are only given out when a royal is missing and is being searched for. "There is only one royal member missing," he stated. The other agents went wide-eyed and started to look around. The agent with the ring started to walk where they drove from. Soon he noticed a young man with green hair that had just entered an alleyway. The moment he got within 30 feet, the ring started to burn slightly again. "Found him. We have found the prince," he thought. He walked towards the young man, and the young man noticed. His eyes widened and then started to bolt, but the other agents were too skilled and had already blocked off the other escape routes. They were not going to lose the missing prince when he was this close to them. The young prince started to yell something. Did they really contact the Empire's guards of the Westwin Empire to capture me? They really are trying to get rid of me that badly. The young prince yelled, and the guards were horrified that someone was after their prince, and he thought that they were after him as well. The main guard introduced himself. "Please calm down. We don't know what you are referring to. We stopped you for a different matter that we wished to talk to you about. My name is Keith Schuyler. I am the head guard for this unit, and we were on our way to the port to board our military ship to return to our home country. I just need to talk to you. May I approach you? I will keep my arms in the air," Keith stated. The young prince nodded his head very slowly, and Keith noticed that he kept his position to try and bolt if he could. Uniform for the Empire Guards. Their uniforms are standard for all agents to ensure people know that they are members of the Empire's Guard. Now, in Izuku's mind, he was freaking out. He didn't understand why the Empire's Guard would be wanting something from him. They stated they weren't after him for the other matter, but he didn't do anything else. A guard named Keith walked slowly towards Izuku. Izuku knew he was outskilled due to what he knew about these agents, and he had no hope of winning without a quirk. The agent kept walking to Izuku with his hands in the air. He stood within about 5 feet of Izuku and started to talk. The other agents seemed to relax a bit with him close to me, thought Izuku. "Now, the reason we stopped you is because we need to confirm something with you. See this ring on my finger?" he asked, and Izuku nodded his head, not understanding what he was getting at. This ring is called the Royal Finder Ring. It's meant to locate any missing royal blood member within 30 feet of the ring user. These rings were given out over a decade ago when a royal member went missing, and I believe it's triggering off of you. Will you let me test and verify your identity to see if you are the missing royal member known as Izuku Weston?" stated the guard named Keith. Izuku's eyes widened. "What? How? I am just an orphan who was found on the streets where I was abandoned. I can't be your missing royal member," Izuku stated. Izuku thought Keith was crazy. "I just need a few drops of your blood to make my ring react to it. If it does the correct reaction, then we know who you are. If it doesn't, then you are free to leave because we won't get involved in any criminal matters of Japan since we are not their police force. What do you get to lose?" Empire's guard Keith asked. Izuku thought it over and knew he couldn't lose anything. He held out his hand that had a fresh cut from all the running when he scraped it on something in the house. Keith raised the ring under Izuku's hand and wiped some blood onto the ring. Everyone tensed up and waited. After a few seconds, Izuku just got ready to leave when the ring started to change. The ring had a phoenix on it that was holding a dull-looking gem. The phoenix also had red rubies for the eyes, and in the center, the gem turned from the dull gray-looking gem to a red ruby gem. Third POV. Izuku was now sitting in the car with Keith and some other agents as they drove in a convey style, with Izuku's car being in the center of the convey getting protected. "We're clear of any police currently, and we are 30 minutes out from the military transport. I've called ahead and told them to be ready to ship off the moment we arrive and to warn the fleet to be on high alert. I didn't inform them of the reason and said we would explain when the fleet is together," stated one agent in the front of the car. Izuku's mind was still going to all different places. He still couldn't believe that he was running from the police and now is being taken to a military ship to go to the Great Westwin Empire. "So, you said you would explain things in the car, so please explain how I am the prince, since I'm still having trouble believing it," Izuku stated. The main agent nodded his head and started to talk. "Everything started with your birth in July. It was a calm night as you had just been born, and the Emperor and Empress were celebrating your birth when the attack happened. Someone used a teleportation quirk to get into the building past the main guards and set off a bomb. During all of the confusion, they attempted to end the entire royal family, but the guards stopped them first. As they were dying, they used their quirk and teleported you away out of Her Majesty's arms. This was the day you were lost, and we scoured everywhere we could in the Empire, but you were never found. However, the royal family has a special seal that is placed on all royal members. Unborn children get it via their parent that is giving birth, which allows it to transcribe onto the child. This allows the royal family to know if a royal member is still alive or not. This allowed us to know you were still alive," Keith stated. Izuku asked about the seal, and then Keith asked if he had any birthmarks that looked like a phoenix. Izuku did, and he showed it since it was on his left side of the torso. Keith looked at it and confirmed that it was, since the ring and the seal lit up when they got close to each other. The seal is permanent on your body, but seal inside of it is knowledge of the entire empire that is passed down from each generation. It includes languages, political information, and many more things. What the seal also does is seals your birth quirk, since 90% of the time a royal member's birth quirk activities at birth and is too powerful for the baby to use, Keith stated. Izuku was stunned. He just learned that he had a birth quirk. This entire time he had a quirk, but it was sealed automatically due to the royal seal to keep him alive. Keith stated he had no idea what the quirk was. "There is a chance you are 100% quirkless, but it's been very rare in the family. Though it wouldn't matter since there are heavy laws protecting people from discrimination. We also have a lot of leaders in the Empire that are quirkless. One of the main admirals of the fleet is quirkless as well," Keith stated. Izuku was happy to hear his home country treated people better than Japan. Keith explained that he would unseal the royal seal once they were on the boat, since it would knock Izuku out for some hours. Izuku agreed and really wanted to learn if he had a quirk or not. Izuku asked about his parents, and Keith explained how they have been waiting to reunite with Izuku. They had refused to have another child since they didn't want to feel like they were replacing him. As such, they will be happy to learn that Izuku is safe, though would have many questions about everything that happened in his past. Izuku looked nervous at that conversation. Izuku asked to talk about that once they were safe out of Japan. Japan isn't the best to quirkless people, and there is quite a bit of information that I know that shouldn't be said with a large number of people present," Izuku stated. Keith agreed to this, and soon they were informed that the port was 5 minutes away. Soon they arrived at the port, and Izuku saw the military ship that he would be getting on. It's a frigate class, but the main purpose of this ship is the transportation of men. The main ships do most of the fighting, which is rare, but we still keep a standing military since we need to protect anyone that is stupid enough to try and fight the Empire," Keith stated as he escorted Izuku onto the ship. They hit him again since they noticed some police looking around the docks, but they weren't close to the ship currently. Soon, Izuku and the Empire guards were all on the ship, and the military men were looking at Izuku since they knew they were only meant to pick up the Empire's guards and no one else. Keith and the other guards stayed right next to Izuku the entire time and let no one near him. They soon arrived at the ship's deck and meet the captain of the ship. He turned around and saw Izuku. He looked at Keith and started to talk. Why do you have I believe is a Japanese citizen on my ship? He asked. Keith then just nodded at the guards and then they all stood at attention. Attention on deck. His Royal Highness Prince Izuku Westwin is present, yelled Keith and the captains, and everyone else's eyes went wide at their declaration. They immediately fell into attention. Izuku just waved his hand and said, "Please don't. Remember, I'm not used to this. I still am having a hard time believing it still after you explained everything and the entire ring thing," Izuku said with a sigh. They all relaxed and the captain asked Keith to explain. Keith then explained everything and the fact that Izuku was somehow on the run for the Japanese government, which made the captain's eyes widen. "You are 100% sure he is the prince. You know if you are wrong and get the royal family hopes up, you would likely be executed since it would be a major crime to falsify this," the captain stated. Keith just asked Izuku if he could do the ring test again in front of the captain since it had rested itself. Izuku allowed it and the captain saw it and confirmed with his own eyes. He went onto the ship's radio and told everyone to get the ship out to sea right away. Soon after about 5 minutes, they were setting sail. The captain escorted Izuku to the captain's office room that connected to his sleeping quarters. The captain had Izuku sit behind the desk as they all stood in front of it. "Please sit or act as if you normally would for military regulations. I don't want to disrupt your normal operations since I'm unknowledgeable about this. So please forgive me if I make any errors and cause any problems," Izuku stated. The captain just stated it wasn't a problem and he had the guards sit down as he went and called in a sailor. "Sailor measures the young man for clothing and then go retrieve a set that is the closest fit," stated the captain. The sailor got to work and about 10 minutes later he came back with a formal Navy uniform. "Yes, this is an outfit from an anime, sir. The closest fit would be your formal dress uniform, sir. I can tailor it with him wearing it to fit the arm and leg length after he puts it on. Your normal naval outfit would work, but that runs the risk of him being confused with another sailor, and this will set him apart for the men to notice and guard him if anything were to happen before we reach the homeland, sir," states the naval officer that was made to do all of this. Soon Izuku got dressed and the naval officer tailored the suit legs and arms to fit him. Luckily, only the legs needed resizing. As such, Izuku was now changed out of his dirty clothing and was more presentable since they had him take a shower. "Your Highness, we are about 5 minutes out from regrouping with the main fleet. At that time you will be transferred to the flagship since it will be better guarded and survive any attacks longer than this ship. It was my honor to have you on board and I'm proud we will be a part of the fleet to guard your return to the Empire," stated the captain as he placed an arm across his chest and bowed his head a bit. Keith explained this was the way that the military and other government officials should greet the royal family. Even the people do it as well out of respect since the ruling family has led the Empire to safety for so long. After about another 5 minutes the fleet had rejoined together and Izuku was astonished at the sight since this was the first time seeing a large fleet together. Izuku also noticed some submarines as well on the surface of the water. The captain spoke up as they were heading towards an aircraft to take them to the aircraft carrier, which was the flagship currently. "This entire fleet is one of the smaller sized ones. We have a lot of water area to cover that surrounds our empire. We also do a lot of global peacekeeping missions since we are the world's strongest nation and have been for over 200 years thanks to the leadership of the royal family," stated the captain. Izuku was just shocked that this was the smaller size fleet. Soon, the captain, the guards, and Izuku all transferred to the main ship where the admiral of the fleet and all other ship and submarine captains were waiting as they haven't been informed of why the fleet was put on high alert. They were really wondering what would cause a high alert from the transportation vessel since they were picking up the Empire's guards only and then setting sail. They were all standing on the deck now since the captain of the transport ship told them that they needed to be out there and that even the admiral was required to be there. The moment the engine stopped on the helicopter, which they all found unusual, the captain and the guards came out. Out came the captain first and he went into a military pose which caught their attention quickly. Soon all of the Empire guards came out and then fell into a military pose as well since they received some military training even though they are attached to the police branch. Then they noticed another person who they weren't informed of. The captain then yelled, "Attention on deck. His Royal Highness Prince Izuku Westwin is present," he yelled. Everyone went straight into a military pose with their arms across their chest and looked straight forward at Izuku. Izuku just stayed at ease and they all relaxed. "I don't think I will ever get used to that," Izuku stated. The admiral stepped forward and looked at the captain who knew what he wanted to ask. "Admiral, this is indeed Izuku Westwin, the missing prince. They performed the royal blood test on the ring that tracks the royals if they are missing and it did react as it should. I confirmed it with my own eyes since I had the same question," stated the captain. Everyone's eyes were wide. Then Keith spoke up. "Admiral sir, I request the fleet change course and go full speed to return to the homeland right away. I believe there is another fleet that should cross our path or be near it on our journey back and I believe they should join the fleet for the return journey. The prince cannot come to harm," stated Keith. The admiral came out of his shock and agreed. Relay my order to all ships. Set sail for the homeland at once and inform the 6th Fleet that will be near the journey home that they are to regroup with us on my order. Priority 1 mission," stated the Admiral. Soon Izuku was escorted to the officers' mess hall so everyone could fit in. Third POV. Izuku was out cold for around 7 hours. While he was sleeping, he was inside of his mind. "I thought this would be gone after I lost One for All," Izuku thought, but then Izuku saw something different in the distance. Izuku started to walk over to it since he was fully inside his mind, unlike before where he was part mist, and found himself standing in front of a door that read Westwin Ancestral Memories. Izuku opened the door and was flooded with all sorts of information from how the Empire expanded during the war and accomplished its great feats. There was some basic information on all of the previous emperors and empresses of the Empire and when they ruled. There are also rules, knowledge, and traditions of the royal family stored inside the seal so that a new royal member would have knowledge of all basic etiquette and actions to perform in front of others that are not the ruling family. Izuku also saw in his ancestors' knowledge that the ruling family has always ruled through kindness and love but would become strict and merciless to those that sought to harm the Empire. Most information about the current time was non-existent since the information from the current generation only passes on after the death of a living royal member. Izuku was hoping to see information about his parents but didn't have luck. There were years' worth of information inside the seal, and Izuku knew that he would need to slowly go through it all to ensure he understood it all. He did also find some information about the royal bloodline that Izuku thought was impossible but would need to check with his parents. Later on, after what felt like only 10 minutes but was actually hours, Izuku started to wake up. Izuku groaned as he tried to sit up, but a hand pushes him back down. It was a medical officer, and Izuku then remembered where he was at. "How long have I been out?" Izuku asked. The officer looked at the clock and responded, "You've been out about 7 hours now, sir. We just finished combining the 2 fleets together into a medium-sized fleet," stated the medical officer. They then asked Izuku if they could perform a basic health assessment, but did also note that the royal family would have him undergo a very detailed one to understand his current health issues. Izuku agreed and the medical officer got to work. After about 40 minutes the officer was finished, and he wasn't happy to see the damage done to Izuku's body over the years. He knew some of his past due to being informed, but the scars he saw were concerning since even men in the military didn't get that many scars so soon in life. He didn't make any comments about it and only documented everything he noticed and saw and placed it in the medical files on the computer under his former last name Midoriya to keep them hidden from prying eyes. The medical officer called the Emperor guards and they soon arrived to escort Izuku to the control deck. Izuku soon arrived and found the Admiral talking to some officers. They went into their military salutes when he walked in, and Izuku acted a bit more calmly this time and waved his hand and told them to be at ease. "I see some of the information from the royal seal is kicking in," noted the Admiral, and Izuku agreed. "It makes it a bit easier. But I still will need to adjust with people looking up to me for so much leadership. I was wondering how far we are from home," Izuku asked, and was a bit tense with the word home since he never truly had a home. He's only had places he stayed to survive. The Admiral stated that the entire fleet slowed down slightly to ensure all ships would keep up, but they were not concerned with any attacks due to the size of the fleet. "We will be arriving in 4 days' time. Until then we will try to make you as comfortable on board as we can since I know you are not used to sea life," stated the Admiral. Izuku thanked him and asked if he knew any good place to try and gain some quirk control before he arrived in the Empire. "We can have you go out on the deck, but we run the risk of you having a very destructive quirk. As such, I will have to request you wait on practicing to any large level. However, that doesn't mean we can't have you feel for it and start understanding the principles behind it under the guidance of some military quirk counselors, since we do have military families on the bases in the Empire and our foreign bases," stated the Admiral. Izuku was taken out to the deck and was met with a military officer who would help him feel the quirk and get an idea of what it might do. They had Izuku sit down on the deck and just feel inside of himself. "You are looking for some sort of energy or power that represents your quirk. Let us know when you find it and what it feels like to you," stated one of the officers who had a notebook with him taking notes. The officers and guards were very detailed on any notes they took for the royal family, so everything Izuku did since arriving would be documented, since his arrival would become historical information. Soon Izuku just had his eyes closed and was feeling inside of himself. Izuku felt something after about 5 minutes. "I feel something. It feels heavy, but then it feels light, like it's changing between the two," Izuku said as he questioned his feeling. The officers took down notes and asked him if it takes any shape in his mind. Izuku then focused a bit more, and as he did, the image became more clear. It was as if Izuku was the center of a universe. He felt as if what he was seeing and feeling was a miniature solar system, and that he was the one that controlled the flow of movement in this universe. Izuku then explained the feeling and what it appeared to him like. "It felt like I controlled the movement of the universe that appeared in my mind. as if I was the center of it and could direct it as I please, Izuku stated. The officers finished writing their notes down and started to talk theories which Izuku got involved in, and they were shocked he could keep up. They also made note of that for records. Soon after all three of them talking, they came up with a few ideas of what Izuku's quirk might be. One was a form of telekinesis that was powerful based on his description. Another was some form of gravity manipulation. Nothing else seems that it would fit. How he described it would fit these two, but I'm leaning towards the gravity one since you stated it felt like you were the center of it. In science, the sun is the center of the universe, and while everything has its own gravity, the sun is the biggest one normally, and everything typically moves around the sun itself, which in this case would be you, stated one officer, and they all agreed that it was the best fit. Now, I know you want to test it and figure it out, but we can't do that here. If it was some weaker quirk, maybe the Admiral would approve, but since it's a gravity one, so many things could go wrong out at sea. As such, we need to wait for any more tests to be done on land where we won't endanger people's lives, stated the other officer. Izuku agreed with this since he didn't want to risk anyone either. Soon they left to go to the mess hall since it was past time to eat lunch, and Izuku was now hungry. After about 15 minutes, the Admiral arrived in the mess hall, and Izuku told him at ease since any military or police would go into that stance when they walk into a room with him until he stated for them to go at ease. The Admiral sat down at Izuku's request and they talked about a few matters. I heard you finished the basic quirk consulting. Were you all able to figure what your quirk might be if you have one? The Admiral asked, and the guards gave him the notes from the officers. The Admiral was shocked that it was likely a gravity control quirk since they are rare and powerful ones. They then talked about how the fleet has already alerted the royal family, who is frantically waiting for the arrival of the fleet. Your parents are happy and excited to hear about your return. I did inform them of your request of wanting to be able to integrate into the Empire without everyone knowing who you are right away. And they found it reasonable since you wouldn't be used to all the attention being a royal would bring, stated the Admiral. Soon they finished eating, and Izuku asked if there was anywhere he could train physically on the ship since he hasn't had time to train in the past 2 months since being removed from UA. The aircraft carrier did have a small gym aboard the ship. It was tight and wasn't a lot of space between equipment, but it was enough to be safe and for people to move around. Izuku got changed into some workout clothing that the crew provided and got to work. Most of the Empire guards stayed outside to provide room, but 2 did get changed and worked out with Izuku so there would be someone near him. They were more or less performing the duties of the royal guards until Izuku was transferred to their watch. Izuku got his body working and could feel the burn since he hasn't had time to work his muscles during the entire time he was on the run. The ship's crew and guards were shocked at the amount of weight Izuku could lift. He was lifting around 520 pounds. After about 1 hour of training, Izuku came to a rest and muttered something that they all heard. Damn, I lost some weight due to not training for 2 straight months, Izuku muttered, and they were all shocked. Most of them could do the weight he did easily, but they had years of military training, and Izuku was shorter than all of them and wore baggy clothing that made them think of him having a weaker physical body. What physical training did he go through to lift that much? They thought. Soon Izuku was taken to a room to stay in for the next 4 days. It was an officer's room, or otherwise known as a stateroom, that they cleared out temporarily. The officer said it wasn't a problem, and he would sleep in the officer's sleeping area that had several empty sleeping spots currently since they didn't have a large number of officers on board currently. As such, Izuku would have a private quarters area now. Izuku thanked the officer and he just responded it wasn't a problem. They provided him several naval uniforms to change into, and he still had the captain's formal uniform from before. Soon the first day came to an end and Izuku just went to sleep since his body was exhausted from all of the new things he had done. This left 3 days before he would arrive in his birthplace and be reunited with his family. Izuku awoke the next day and got dressed. He stepped outside of his door and found a few of the Empire guards standing there. Did you guys stand here all night? Izuku asked. They shook their heads. Not us personally. We rotated ourselves on shifts. Wherever you go, you will have at least 2 Empire guards with you during this trip. The moment you arrive in the Empire, you will be assigned a minimum of 4 royal guards who are far more trained and powerful than us. They will be with you constantly if you leave the palace, and while in the palace you normally have royal guards roaming the entire palace, so only 1 guard is typically present nearby for anything you need, stated the guard. Izuku just nodded his head since he should have expected this. Izuku requested to go to the bridge since he wanted to watch the sea since he didn't want to bother any of the crew working on the ship. As such, the guards escorted him to the bridge and Izuku explained why he was up there, and the Admiral just had Izuku sit in his commanding chair since it would be out of the way but still have an amazing view. Izuku thanked him and just sat there and watched the sea as they traveled. Izuku also watched the deck and saw how everything worked. Though as Izuku was sitting there he fell into deep thought about his dream to be a hero. What would happen to it now? The Admiral noticed he was in a deep thought that was troubling him and decided to ask about it. Your Highness, what troubles you? He asked, and Izuku took a second to realize he was being talked to. Sorry, not used to people calling me that. I was thinking of my dream to be a hero and I realized it won't happen now since the Empire doesn't have heroes and I will be expected to become the next ruler," Izuku stated with a small frown. This causes the admirals and the crew to tense up. They realized what they were overlooking. Up to now, their young prince has had an entirely different life and different dreams, and now he was being taken to go become an heir to a throne that he never knew he had a connection with. They realized that the prince might not even want to become their next ruler. The admiral stood there for a moment and thought before talking. "Your Highness, may I speak freely, sir?" asked the admiral. Izuku said yes and wished everyone would speak their true thoughts to him. The admiral nodded his head and then spoke. "Sir, was your dream to be a hero to save and help people, or was it for the fame and fortune of being a hero?" he asked Izuku, and everyone were shocked at the question, but Izuku quickly recovered and responded. "I wanted to help people and save them," with a smile like the #1 hero All Might, though that is ironic since he didn't believe I wasn't a traitor to the hero society, Izuku stated. The admiral nodded his head again and then spoke more. "I see. So wouldn't you say your dream is still alive then?" he stated, which just confused everyone. Izuku looked at him like he was a fool. How was a prince, a future emperor, going to be the same as a hero? "I see everyone is confused in my words. Izuku, if I may call you that directly, sir," the admiral stated, and Izuku said yes, he was fine with it. "You're acting as if the position of the prince and the future ruler is powerless when it is not. As the prince and the heir to the throne, you will hold so much power. These positions are not puppet heads like old monarchies and empires of the past. The emperor and empress hold a great deal of power in the empire, and so does the heir. You and your family can make new laws, change policies, order the police, military, and other government bodies around in the empire. There are indeed checks and balances to ensure against a tyrant ruler that the past rulers have put in place, but your position you are now in isn't ceremonial. You will wield great power," stated the admiral, and soon Izuku's eyes widened at the implications. "I see you are getting it. As a hero in Japan or another country, you have limited influence due to the position of only being a hero, while in the empire you will be a prince that controls almost everything with only checks and balances that keep you from being a tyrant. Otherwise, you can advocate for better living situations, new policies for children, ways to reduce crime, and other things. You will be leading an entire empire to which the world reacts. As such, you can still save and help people with a smile in your position of a prince far more than you could as a hero. It just requires less physical fighting than the hero job does," stated the admiral. Izuku just had some tears going down his eyes as he sobbed out a thank you to the admiral. Izuku only ever wanted to help people, and he foolishly thought he was going to be stuck as a puppet head, unable to enact change while he had to watch people suffer. Now, though, he realized he was going to be far more powerful than he anticipated and could help and save people on a grander scale. The crew was tense since the admiral had just convinced Izuku of becoming their prince and future ruler. They were also happy with the good and loving nature that the prince had been showing so far on their ships. They believed their empire would be in great hands in the future, and they were pleased to be some of the first people to have met the prince on his return to the royal palace. Soon everyone went back to their own things and the day went slowly by. Izuku spent most of it just watching the sea go by and watching the actions on the deck. The admiral asked Izuku to explain his life up to the present so they could have a report ready for his parents to review later on, so if they had any questions they could ask him. Izuku nodded his head and started to explain his life. From how he was raised in an orphanage and from being declared quirkless and the treatment he received. He did state that he acquired a different quirk that wasn't from the royal family seal but had lost it when he was accused of the crimes he was arrested on. He explained how he escaped and what he did in between the time he escaped to now. If the Empire's guards didn't drive, but I likely would have been arrested or ended depending on the hero or officer that found me, since quirkless people aren't treated kindly, Izuku said. The admiral just kneeled down and looked Izuku in the eye and started to talk. Don't worry about being quirkless, even if there isn't a quirk behind the royal seal. Your parents wouldn't care, nor would the Empire. We are a very accepting empire, seeing as I am a quirkless admiral, stated the admiral. Izuku asked for his name and he said it was Seth Rustling. Izuku thanked him for confirming his hopes of the quirkless treatment since he was still a bit afraid. He just reassured Izuku and let Izuku keep talking. Soon they learned a great deal and the facts of how Japan treated their prince. The admiral wasn't happy with Japan. Izuku asked to keep his return on the down low and only inform the necessary people since he wanted to get used to the country before people found out how he looked. I'm sure most people on these ships know by now, but we will order them to remain silent. We will have to inform the royal family and they will inform certain government officials, but I'm sure we can keep your appearance hidden from the general public and explain that you want to integrate into the empire before people treat you as a royal member. I'm quite sure they will easily accept that request. They will just be happy to know you have been found and returned alive, stated Admiral Seth. Soon Keith brought up the fact that they need to undo the royal seal, and the Admiral informed them that he would clear out a medical room for the ceremony to happen and would have the officers present to verify everything for the royal family and ensure it went per protocol. As such, that is how Izuku found himself without his shirt on in the medical bay as Keith stood next to him. The commanding officers of each ship were present as they were currently in the open sea and would meet up with the other fleet in roughly 6 hours, and it would take a few days to arrive back at the Empire with their current speed. They soon asked him if he was ready since this would knock him out for a few hours. They had quirk suppressants ready to suppress his quirk if it went out of control, since most royals would have their seal released at the age of 4 or 5. Izuku said he was, and they started the ceremony. It was mostly artificial for ceremonial sake, but then they made a slight cut above the seal and then pressed the ring to it, since the ring can act in place of the ceremonial tool in the homeland. Soon the phoenix mark started to burn with the blood that was on it. After about 1 minute, Izuku gasped as a flood of information went into his mind and he passed out due to the stress on his mind and body. Third POV. It was currently the morning of the last day of the trip. The fleet would arrive around 11 a.m. in the port, where the entire crew of all of the ships would get off to take a break, since the Admiral stated that the orders were for the 2 combined fleets to refuel the ships and restock before setting off in 2 weeks to continue the rest of their tour. Izuku apologized for interrupting their current tour and having it extended longer. The Admiral just waved it off. Most of the crew lives closer can return home by military airplanes for roughly a week and a half to spend time with their families, so it's fine. They get to spend unplanned time with their families, which is nice for them all, stated the Admiral. Izuku had decided to check out the rest of with a few crew guiding him so he didn't cause any problems for the rest of the crew. Izuku had learned quite a bit about the ship, and he also talked to quite a few crew members as well to get a feel for what people in the Empire might be like. Izuku was also starting to get used to the native language of the Empire, which he had knowledge of now thanks to the royal seal. Izuku was really interested in seeing the Empire, since it was said to be far more technologically advanced than all of the other countries and didn't suffer during the Quirk riots over 200 years ago, which destroyed a lot of documents and knowledge. As such, the Empire was a treasure trove of old knowledge from all those centuries ago. As Izuku was currently eating a small snack to hold him over until later in the day, the Admiral walked in. "Sir," he stated, and Izuku had him go at ease. "We have entered the territorial waters of the Empire. As such, we will arrive in port in about 2 hours. Once we do, all the commanding officers of the ships, the Empire Guards, and yourself will meet with a platoon of royal guards who will be in charge of your safety to ensure you arrive back at the capital city," stated the Admiral. Izuku thanked him and wondered what the capital city of Bearhelm is like. Soon, though, he would find out and could only get ready for the trip. He was told the trip between the port and the capital city would take roughly 30 to 40 minutes due to the speed of the royal plane, which was short in his opinion, but talking in the fact that the Empire is more advanced than the rest of the world, it makes sense they would have better transportation systems. Izuku got dressed in the dress uniform that he received from the captain of the other ship so he would look more presentable. Soon the last few hours passed and they were arriving at the military port. Izuku came up to the command deck and saw the port coming into view. It was a breathtaking view. Izuku was confused about why there are normal boats at the port if it was called a military port. The Admiral explained that all those smaller boats belong to people in the Navy, so they don't have to go far to go out to sea on their own personal boats during breaks and tours. Though the Admiral stated the boats are under heavy restrictions on who can park their personal boats there, and the military is free to board them at any moment for inspections to ensure nothing illegal is going on in the port. Soon the vessels all started to enter the port, and it took about 1 hour for them all to dock at their separate ports around the port city. Imagine this port city can handle military vessels, and the main buildings in the front view are all military buildings for the port city. Soon they all started to exit ships, and the naval crews all saluted Izuku from their ships as he was led away by the commanding officers and Empire Guards. Izuku waved at everyone since they had taken care of him and then focused on what was in front of him. They soon arrived inside one of the buildings and found a platoon of royal guards waiting for them. Imagine there is another set of the outfit, but a male version as well. One of the royal guards walked up and then they all kneeled to him with one arm across their chest. "Greetings, Your Highness. We are thrilled to have heard you were found. Your parents are awaiting our arrival back in the capital city. We will be taking the royal plane and have escort planes following around your aircraft in the air. I'm the head royal guard for this platoon, Leon Warren," stated Leon, the now identified head guard for this platoon. Izuku told them to stand up, and soon after a few words they started to head towards the royal plane and were up in the air in 10 minutes. Izuku noticed there were some transport aircraft carrying the other royal guard, while there were about 6 of them in his aircraft. He also noticed some advanced-looking fighter planes following them and in front of them. The main royal guard questioned the commanding officers for details of what has happened so far, and he started to review the notes and documents that they have put together. Keith did inform the royal guard of the incident in Japan. We might need to talk with the royal family and the council about any agreements we have with Japan currently. The treatment of their own people in addition to our prince can't keep going. They arrested him on a very lacking amount of evidence when they had evidence that countered it," Heath explained as he pulled out a laptop from one area and pulled up the Japanese news about Izuku still being on the run and has been missing for 2.5 months now. The royal guard wasn't pleased with the news he was seeing. He made a few calls and Izuku could hear him give some orders to people. Some were about getting a detailed report of Izuku's entire life and then looking into the incident that got him arrested and to find evidence that counters their claims. Sooner or later we will be able to prove them wrong. Hopefully, we can secure his personal effects as well, since those notebooks would be great proof against their claims, since he would have already had all of the information and wouldn't need to steal it, stated Leon. Izuku just smacked his head. "I forgot about my own damn notebooks, could have proved my innocence that day," Izuku groaned. Leon and Keith just chuckled a bit and told him they would prove his innocence one day. "Regardless, even if we can't find proof, it won't matter since they can never arrest you. The Empire would never revoke your diplomatic immunity you will get once everything is set up. So as long as you don't commit murder or other vile crimes, your parents wouldn't revoke it, but you would get punished back in the Empire if you did something stupid," Leon stated. Izuku nodded his head and focused back on the flight. He watched the ground from the plane as it went by so fast. He could see some large cities as they were flying, and they were amazing to look at. Soon after about another 30 minutes of flying, they were coming close to the capital city. The pilot told everyone to sit down and bulk up. After about another 5 minutes they landed and taxied on a runway where there was a convoy of vehicles waiting for him. As the royal guards went out first, Izuku followed with the Empire guards and commanding officers right behind him. Everyone present saluted him with one arm across their chest. As Izuku was standing there, he heard the car doors open and saw them. He did an internet search for their pictures, but it was still making him nervous to see them in person. He saw his biological parents coming out of the main car. There stood the current Emperor Francis Westwin and the Empress Mary Westwin. Izuku realized he got most of his looks from his mother with the green hair and green eyes and a mixture of their skin tone with his father's hair, since his mother is a bit more straight and smooth looking. Izuku just stood there since he didn't know what to do. He's never had people that cared for him as a family should. The closest thing was the older lady from the orphanage. Soon, the tension was broken when the Empress started to walk, which turned into a sprint, and she pulled Izuku down to the ground with a hug. Izuku tensed up a bit since he wasn't expecting it and from him used to being harmed by others. "Welcome home, son," she said as she planted a kiss on his forehead, and Izuku just had a few tears in his eyes as he was still nervous and tense. Then he felt a large hand on his head and saw it belonged to his father. "It's good to see you once again, son. Let's move this into the car so we can start talking as we return to the palace. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for us like we do for you," stated Francis as he just lifted Izuku's mother up into his arms to carry her since she was still crying a bit. Izuku just got up with the hand Francis offered and they walked to the car. Izuku noticed the commanding officers all went to other cars while the royal guard all went to others as well. Within a few minutes the cars were driving off and they were now sitting in the car talking. "I know some details of my disappearance. It still is hard to accept that I've been some missing prince this entire time," Izuku said. Francis just pulled out a ring and put some of his blood on it, and it reacted the same way it did when Izuku did it to another ring. Then Mary Westwin did it and it reacted the same. "I'm not born into the bloodline. I married your mother and joined the line and had my blood registered in the system. You and your mother are the direct descendants of the line, and yours will react the same way ours did as proof of belonging to the royal family," Francis said as he got a few drops of Izuku's blood and confirmed it to Izuku once again. "We can do a DNA test to prove it more once we arrive in the palace, since I'm sure you will believe it more than the ring since it's a more commonly known method," Francis said, since it was true that the ring wasn't known quite well and DNA was a standard method. As they were driving, Izuku was asking things about themselves and Izuku was answering some as well when they entered the city since they had left the military airport and base. The city was breathtaking to Izuku. The closer they got, the more amazing it looked to Izuku. It was a very large city with many skyscrapers. Izuku wondered how villains never destroyed a lot of buildings. Izuku asked about the crime rates and how these buildings don't get destroyed by people. "We have crime like every other country in the world. There is no stopping crime for good. That is a foolish idea since humans will always be free nature beings. However, we do have an amazing low crime rate and the police and Empire guards deal with any crime on a constant basis. We hardly ever have trouble with villains destroying a lot of things since they are normally stopped quickly when they start something. We have had a few incidents of attacks on buildings before, but again they were quickly dealt with," Mary stated. After about 15 minutes of driving and Izuku looking around the city, they soon passed into an open area. Izuku noticed that all the buildings were spaced away from the buildings in the middle, and this building appeared to be the royal palace. The palace was built on elevated land which had a lot of trees surrounding it. There was also the main bridge area that connected to the elevated land. This allowed people to drive up to the palace if they could get past the main guard gates. This was built long ago before quirks ever came to be. It has stood the test of time itself and still offers protection for the royal family. Due to all the nearby land being cleared out, no one can easily approach without being seen, and if they are found going anywhere but the main bridge to the palace, they are detained right away. It offers the guards a 360-degree view around so they can better guard us. The cars soon made it to the inner gate, and Izuku and his newfound parents stepped out of the car, and the two of them had Izuku follow them inside. After about another 5 minutes, they soon arrived inside the throne room. Welcome Izuku to the throne room of the Westwin Empire. The scale behind the thrones represents how the ruling family has always been fair and kind, yet merciless and strict when it comes to those that sought harm to our empire. This room also serves as a second council room when the council and the royal family hold a joint session to talk about matters, stated Izuku's father Francis. Izuku just nodded his head as he was taking everything in. His parents moved and sat down on the thrones. He noticed his mother sat in the center with his father sitting to the right. Izuku's mother called Izuku. "Izuku, please come sit down, sweetie," she said as she pointed to the throne on her left side. Izuku did as he was told and sat down. Soon the room filled with a large number of royal guards. Izuku was sure there were over 500 royal guards, which shocked him since there were only 3 royal members. If you are wondering about the numbers, it's because they do more than just guard us. They also deal with some state matters and act as field commanders for the police and military when situations call for it, since they also represent our voice and actions, stated Izuku's mother. Soon people stopped coming in. A royal guard member spoke up. "Your Majesties, all royal guards are present, and the palace is being guarded currently by the police outside and some empire guards inside while we are all meeting," stated one man. The Empress waved her hand and he stepped back. "Thank you for coming so quickly. As you can see, we have a third member on the throne with us. This is our son Izuku Westwin, the lost prince who was recently found roughly 1 week ago. He was transported by some of the Empire guards from Japan, and the 6th and 7th Fleet transported him back by sea under heavy guard," stated the Empress. Everyone's eyes went wide when they looked at Izuku, who tensed but smiled and waved a bit. As such, the news of his return is to be spread across the Empire. However, per my son's request, his appearance will not be given out to allow him to integrate with the general public before we announce his appearance. I'm setting his first public appearance in roughly 1 year's time. As such, spread the news of him returning and being safe, but not his appearance, and if people ask, then explain why and when the palace will have him start appearing officially," stated the Empress. Everyone did the royal salute to the family and shouted that they understood. Soon they were dismissed, and the Empire guards and commanding officers of the vessels were told to stay. Izuku's parents talked to them about the events that happened since they found Izuku. The reports and everything that has been taken so far was handed over for the family to read and to get a clear view. They also were given the report of what Izuku said his past was like, which sent Francis into a rage. He left the room and you could hear something break before he walked back in. Then both parents got up and just pulled Izuku into a tight hug, which made him tense, and they noticed it. "Damn bastards. They are lucky they belong to another country," thought his parents. Soon they calmed down and let Izuku go and sit back down, which he did, though with a few tears out of his eye from getting hugged, which he muttered he really liked. The Emperor and Empress just talked to the guards and officers and rewarded them for finding and transporting him back. "Each of you will receive a bonus of 3 months' pay, and everyone on the ships that transported him back will receive 1.5 months' pay bonus. Please express our thanks to them for protecting our son on the journey home," stated the Emperor. Soon they were all dismissed, and it was just Izuku and his parents. Third, Izuku was nervous since it was just now him and his parents that he just literally met for the first time ever. After a few minutes, Mary started to talk. "Izuku, sweetie, you need to calm down, you are having a panic attack," Mary stated. This shocked Izuku since he didn't even realize he had closed his eyes and had gone into one. He followed his father's breathing pattern and was able to come out of the panic attack. Izuku just realized that they had moved him down to the floor of the throne room, and his father was behind him with Izuku in his chest so Izuku could copy his breathing. "First time someone has helped me out of one of my panic attacks," Izuku thought as he got off the floor and thanked them. He was embarrassed that happened in front of them. He didn't want to give them a reason to hate him. Though Izuku didn't realize he mumbled this. He noticed his parents' eyes widen and then fall into a sad look. "Son, we would never hate you, especially things that are outside of your control," stated Francis. Izuku just asked if he had muttered all of that out, and they nodded their heads. "I know there were some statements and documents that the naval officers and Empire guards had created during the trip here. Let's move locations to a more comfortable room and go over everything so we can get caught up and we can talk about why you had a panic attack." "Okay," Izuku's mother Mary asked in a kind tone filled with warmth. Izuku nodded his head and followed them into a room a few doors down from the throne room. They had already read some of the reports but didn't get through them all in the throne room. As such, they wanted to finish reading them and start talking about his past. They entered a small library-looking room. Izuku looked around and noticed some photos. One was of his parents and a baby. That is right after you got born. It was before the attack. It was the sole picture we had of you, Mary stated as she picked it up and put her hand on the picture. Izuku kind wishes they had the other photos from the orphanage. The older lady that took care of him had taken a lot of photos of them as individuals and group photos. He knew it was kept in a photo book, but he couldn't go back and get it. If you were able to send someone without people finding out. There is a photo book in the orphanage I lived in with a lot of my photos. The first older lady that took care of us before she passed in my last year of middle school had taken a lot of photos of me and the other children. She was one of the few that didn't look down on quirkless people, Izuku stated. He saw his father make a note to inform someone of the photos and to acquire them somehow. Soon, Izuku watched as his parents read all of the documents. It took them around half an hour as Izuku just sat there and picked a book to read from the shelves. Palace belongs to my parents, so I shouldn't get in trouble for doing much, Izuku thought. As he was absorbed in reading, he heard some moving around and saw that they had finished. He put the book back and left a bookmark where he was at in it. His parents didn't say anything for a few minutes, which made him nervous. Then his father broke the tension. I'm sorry that you had to go through all of that. You were meant to be in our lives, and yet you were treated so horribly due to the royal seal that is placed on you once your mother becomes pregnant, Francis stated while he held his head. Mary just moved over to Izuku and hugged him. They asked if they could see the physical scars, and Izuku showed them. There was a handful of scars from burn marks to cuts from other quirks. He also had scars from using One for All and breaking his bones as well. Those were the interesting scars to talk about. Izuku knew he had to tell them about One for All since they knew of his birth quirk and the fact that he already mentioned that he received one via a transfer. As such, Izuku recounted the day in school where he got suicided baited by Bakugo Kaken. His parents made him stop calling Bakugo the nickname since they presented him with a logical argument on why he shouldn't. Izuku was so used to using it though, but agreed that he would try stopping. He then talked about the slime villain and how he met All Might the first time. They were not pleased with the former #1 hero leaving their son on a rooftop after a villain attack. They knew most laws and countries required the hero to transport the victim to a hospital or call 911, which All Might didn't do and could be sued for the failure of his job. Izuku then hit the point where he talked about running to save his former friend and how he got yelled at by the heroes even though they didn't do anything. His parents scolded him for running into something without training, but did tell him that he did a good job, which made Izuku happy. They then talked about how Izuku met All Might a second time and how he received a quirk called One for All after months of physical conditioning. They were again pissed at All Might's lackluster training on how to control the quirk. He talked about how he got into UA after saving a girl from the robot worth 0 points and that he did get a few robot villains but would have failed without the rescue points. They knew about the exam and always disagreed with it in private amongst themselves since it failed to capture so many good mental quirk users. They were proud of their son's determination to save people but knew they would need to tame it down a bit with some self-care. Izuku then talked about how his first day and everything went. Soon the conversation moved to the USJ attack and how they got attacked by the League of Villains. We've heard about them. Japanese villains that were aiming to take down All Might and disturb the peace in Japan. Overall, based on our information, they are a bunch of people failed by society and turned into hating it and wanting to change it through force, stated Francis. Izuku agreed and then told them about the mall incident and then the summer camp attack where he saved a boy named Kota from the villain known as Muscular. That is how I got some of the scars due to One for All. I had to go far past my limits and did some damage to my body. Doctors told me too many times of doing that and I lose function of my arms, Izuku said, and his parents said they would have doctors do a full checkup on him and see if anything could be permanently fixed up since their country had far better medical technology and doctors. That doesn't even include medical quirks either. After the part about the training camp, Izuku then spoke of how they went and saved Bakugo. Overall, Izuku went to keep his friends out of trouble and not get ended. That is how Bakugo got saved and All Might form got revealed to the public since he won the battle against All for One, Izuku stated. Izuku was shocked to learn that they had All for One's real name and a lot about him. This empire didn't lose our records during the quirk riots and everything. As such, we got all the information from back then. If it was online and accessible, we have a copy of it somewhere for the most part, Francis stated. After talking about the full history of One for All and getting some fill-in from his parents, Izuku moved on to the provisional exam and how he passed it. This led to the topic of Sir Night-Eye and Lamillan. His parents were too happy with either of those people. Sir Night-Eye for his treatment of Izuku and how he failed to be a teacher when he took Izuku in, and Lamillan for bowing to pressure and accepting something that wasn't meant for him. Doesn't matter what Sir Night-Eye wanted. It wasn't his quirk, nor was it All Might's the moment he gave it to you, Mary stated while drinking tea. Francis just agreed, which made Izuku feel happier that he wasn't wrong for his thinking. They then talked about how Izuku met Eri and how the raid went. I always regretted letting her go that day, though I'm doubtful I could have won in a straight-up fight that day if I did try to take her, Izuku stated looking back on that day. His parents agreed that he likely wouldn't have due to the power his opponent had. Sometimes you do need patience while others you need to push straight through. It's knowing when to do either of those that matter the most and makes you a more effective leader, Francis stated as he looked at his son. The conversation shifted to the day of the raid and how it ended. They talked about Sir Night-Eye's death and how Lemillion became quirkless due to being hit by a bullet. Izuku did talk about how happy he was to have saved Eri and get her away from that man, and his parents just laughed at him for his facial expression that showed so much joy. Izuku was embarrassed that they were laughing at him, but they soon moved on. Izuku talked about his feelings regarding Sir Night-Eye's death, and they agreed that it was about right. He will feel sad about someone dying, but for him, there was so much hostility from him that you couldn't feel as sad as you normally would due to his treatment. No one can hold that against you if they are sane, Francis stated. They talked about some of their encounters with death over the years and how they reacted, and Izuku felt better about himself that he wasn't cruel since he didn't feel as bad as he thought he should have. So that is how all that went. From there, we get to the festival where we got Eri to smile due to the class performance and that there wasn't anything major outside of his fight with Gentle Criminal. His parents looked up the video of it since they knew their spy network had gotten it at one point. They gather any and all information about villains that make any kind of splash in other countries so they can be knowledgeable about it. They saw how Izuku was with One for All and were glad he had gotten so good at it, but were still pissed that All Might backed him into a corner and had him give it up. They then talked about the day Izuku got betrayed and what classmates spoke up in his defense and what ones easily believed the lies. They were disappointed in his former friends, especially the ones that he had saved from incidents or themselves, like the kid with Stain. Francis just glared at his son for taking on the hero Ender when he didn't have the skill level, but couldn't be too mad since he had to do it to save someone. As they talked about the so-called evidence, Izuku made a comment which shocked them a bit. I realized that they had their so-called proof of me doing it, but they also had evidence that I didn't do it since the notebooks I did would have had all the same information or better. They knew about the notebooks but still believed the video, which didn't even show my face at all and only my uniform, Izuku said, and his parents got pissed again from earlier since this was part of the report they had read from before that pissed them off so much. The school had direct evidence that would suggest that Izuku wouldn't have a need to break in and steal the files. As such, it should have raised questions about his involvement, and they knew about the detective with the lie detector quirk who could have proved Izuku being innocent, but he wasn't brought in to clear Izuku at all. Izuku never saw him before they had already leaked out that he was the so-called traitor to UA and had come to arrest him. So, that was my life. The horrible treatment in schools by my peers and adults to the loss of One for All and being betrayed, Izuku said while looking out the window. They have been talking for several hours, Izuku noticed. His parents never blamed him or looked down on him. Instead, they told him how strong he was to overcome everything and survive to this day. Izuku was so happy that they accepted him. They soon talked a bit about themselves and what they have done since the day they lost him. Izuku learned that his mother actually can't have more children. It's not that we wanted to replace you or anything, especially with knowing you were still alive. During one of my annual checkups about 8 years after you were gone, we discovered that my body has just stopped producing eggs. As such, I won't be able to have more children, Mary stated. Izuku hugged his mother. During all of the talking, he has been warming up to them more, but it would be a bit before he fully trusted them. Izuku learned that once he reaches the age of 18 he will be legally allowed to ascend to the throne, but while his parents are alive he won't have a need to unless they retire before they die. Izuku was glad he would have time before he had to ascend the throne. Izuku also did decide to bring up the months he was on the run. Mom, Dad, Izuku said, and they looked at him. God, going have to get used to calling people that, Izuku said, and they all had smiles at that. During my time on the run, I met an info broker, villain by law that I did business with to get a safe house and money. His name is Jurin and he is one of the major players in Japan for info. I want to extend him an IU. Even though it was a deal where he earned off of it, I feel like I owe him a bit since he could have just turned me into other villains or even the police since there was a bounty out for me, stated Izuku, and his parents nodded their heads and thought for a bit. Can you still make contact with him? Asked Francis, and Izuku said that he still had the burner phone and the number. They agreed to let Izuku contact Jurin and extend the IU with Jurin, knowing Izuku was now a prince. Jurin already knew what he looked like, and sooner or later a description of him would get out, so it didn't matter much since Jurin would be smart enough to keep the info to himself due to the weight of the eye. As such, they contacted Jurin. After a few rings, he answered. Name? Jurin's voice asked. He wanted to make sure this was still Izuku. Hello Jurin, it's Izuku. Izuku responded. Kid, where have you been? You have been missing off my radar for a week now, Jurin asked, and Izuku explained his situation. Kid, did you get some drugs? Because honestly, kid, I thought a bit better of you than that, Jurin said. This caused Izuku's parents to laugh, which alerted Jiren to other people there. Jiren asked who was there and Izuku said his parents. They started to talk and Jiren recognized the voices from online videos he has watched of the two royals. You weren't kidding, kid," Jiren stated. "Indeed he wasn't. We know that you did earn money off our son's deals, but you still could have turned him in, which would have never allowed him to reunite with us. As such, as of this moment, you have an IU from our son, though it comes with conditions. Nothing illegal, only things that he or we can do through legal means. This can be anything within the law that would be complex to do, like granting someone citizenship in our country, though note that no mass murders or people like that. Also, we expect you to keep quiet about Izuku being the prince for at least 1 year, since we will have a public event in around 1 year's time. Do you understand, Mr. Jiren?" Francis stated. Jiren agreed right away, since an IU from the royal family of the most powerful nation in the world is a powerful IU. He could use it to escape to their country and live a retired life if he ever needed to. Soon the call was ended and they went back to talking more. The night dragged on and soon it was going to be time for them to sleep. Izuku told them he wasn't hungry currently, since they had been snacking on some food some butlers had brought earlier. As such, they decided to show Izuku to his bedroom and would show him to the rest of the palace the next day. They had cleared their schedules for the entire next week to ensure they could help him adjust and would slowly increase their schedules again. Third POV. Izuku soon woke up to find himself in a room that he wasn't familiar with. However, after a few seconds, his mind caught up with where he was and remembered that he arrived at the Westwin capital city yesterday and spent the entire day talking with his parents. Izuku got up and looked around the room. He started to notice the details of the room and the fact that it was fancy, but not the image you think of when you think of a royal family. Overall, the room was modern and had complementary colors to itself, without any large statements that this was a room of a prince, but instead just a room of someone more well off. Izuku also remembered that he was located near one of the Tower Peak areas. Izuku soon got dressed in the clothing he found in the closet. He had a different range of clothing, but there were several versions of this outfit that he liked really well. He knew he could use the scarf to hide his face in the future if he ever wanted to escape into the city and explore, though he knew he would need to take some guards with him. His parents would not let him go out of the palace without them. He did remember that conversation from yesterday quite well. Flashback now. Izuku, we know you are used to freedom and going and coming when you wish for the most part. That is going to change slightly. You can go more or less anywhere in the palace. If you wish to go outside of the palace, you need to take a squad of royal guards with you. They will wear plain clothes to blend in with you and keep within a certain distance, while one will be close by though. This is to ensure we don't lose you again, Izuku's father Francis stated. Izuku could only agree. He knew they would be afraid of losing him again, and they would be far more protective for a while until they all adjusted to the major change in each other's lives. Izuku finished changing and stepped out of his door and didn't see anyone. He decided to just explore the palace. The problem was he didn't really know his way around, so he was just going in blind. The first room that Izuku found was a very large room and was interesting. Izuku found the royal library, which was full of books and had multiple floors of books as well. "Welcome, Your Highness," stated a voice to Izuku's side. Izuku turned around and was met with someone in some darker clothing and had a very older appearance. The man introduced himself with an arm across the chest. "I am the royal librarian and my name is Lapis. I'm in charge of keeping this room sorted and cleaned up," stated Lapis. Izuku introduced himself as well, even though the other party knew who he was already, and then asked some question. "What all information is in this library?" Izuku asked. Lapis thought for a second and then spoke. "More or less everything and anything. We have information on digital formats, but also book format and older formats as well. We have a lot of information from the time before quirks appeared, as our empire was one of the very few that didn't have trouble during that time. As such, we are the world's knowledge source. Though most don't realize, we actually do have records from back then, since we don't publicize it, since knowledge is power after all," Lapis stated. He then explained that one of his main functions was scribing all old information from old formats into new formats that can be easily saved in the event the information is old in the library. Izuku knew he would likely come back here later on in the future, since he could read things from centuries ago. Izuku said his goodbye and started to search for the next room. As he walked about 50 feet, he found another door and opened it. This room was a formal dining room, or based on Izuku's knowledge from the seal, it was called a stateroom. This is a room that was a bit more lavish, which Izuku could understand since the palace was used to meet foreign leaders and ambassadors when they came to the empire. Izuku expected this was only used for very important dinners and guests, since it had a set of royal throne chairs in it. Imagine there are 3 throne seats instead of 2. Izuku then exited to go to another room. Though while he was walking, he did take in the details of the hallways he was walking in, and they did have a lot of historical details in the hallways. Makes sense due to this building being here far beyond the dawn of quirks, Izuku thought. Soon he found himself at an entrance area. Izuku was about to go down the steps and see what was down below when a voice called out for him. "Hello, Your Highness. Is there anything I can help you with?" stated a voice, and it was the guard that talked to his parents in the throne room yesterday. Thing of him in the royal guard uniform. "Hello, sorry, what was your name again and your position?" Izuku asked him. He just did the arm across the chest and introduced himself. "My name is Vince and I am the current head royal guard. I've been with the family since your grandparents were born. As such, I've served under your grandparents, your parents, and depending on how long I live, I would be honored to serve under you," stated Vince, who now was standing in front of Izuku. Izuku thanked him for his loyalty to the family. "I'm currently exploring the palace and trying to get a hang of where everything is and what all is in this palace," Izuku stated. Vince nodded his head and asked Izuku to follow him. "Currently, you are at the main entrance where guests and others enter. The royal family only comes through here a few times since they are usually driven in by a car to the side entrance. Let me show you around," Vince stated. Vince leads Izuku back the way they came. He made sure Izuku saw the library and main stateroom before moving on. "We have a royal drawing room. This room is used to entertain main guests such as a foreign leader instead of all the smaller ambassadors that might be at one single event," Vince stated. Izuku looked and saw how it looked. It was indeed somewhere where his parents could meet the main guests before going off to the stateroom. Vince explained that quite a few rooms were actually drawing rooms or just random rooms that staff or the royal family could relax in. The reason there were multiple drawing rooms was so that if there are multiple main guests that might not like each other, the royal family can meet them with the distance between the other guests. They soon arrived at a very open room that didn't really have much in it. This room and a few others are smaller ballrooms or party rooms. Different events will be held in these rooms to meet the need of whatever the event is. Christmas parties, charity events, or just public events that we allow people into, stated Vince. Izuku nodded his head and then they saw the other ballrooms. After looking at the different ballrooms, we headed down a flight of steps and arrived in more of a staff section of the building. This had a large industrial kitchen setup and other rooms that the staff would need for the entire palace to function. The next room that Izuku found was the gym for the palace for the royal guards and royal family to use to keep in shape. There were a few more rooms on this level, but they then headed upstairs again to the other areas. One area was the private study of his parents, which Izuku had already been in. Vince then leads Izuku through the other portions of the building. These rooms had different functions, from hosting events or just being for the royal family. There was also a large number of spare rooms for guests that would sleep at the palace after or during events. There was also an assortment of rooms used by the staff to keep the place going. They then found themselves at the royal offices for the royal family. The first one up was the Empress office. The royal member born into the blood is always the main ruling figure. They make the main decisions and are supported by the spouse in the ruling of the empire. As such, the main office is given to your mother, which will turn into your office the day you take over the throne, Vince stated. This office is your father's office, Vince stated as Izuku looked into it. Then they headed to Izuku's office. This office here is yours. As the prince, even though you are not on the throne, can still impact laws, make changes, and do many things. Some though would need approval by your parents or the council, but you still hold a great deal of power, stated Vince. Izuku moved into the office and looked around for a bit. Soon they looked at the other rooms in the palace, and it was a lot of other fancy rooms or some relaxing rooms like a spa room or a pool area for the royal family. They then went outside. As Vince said, there were some buildings and places that Izuku might want to know about if he ever needed to visit them. One building was one of the ones that Izuku saw when they drove into the palace. It wasn't directly connected to the palace. Vince explained that it was the royal guard's main building. In this building was a large number of rooms for the royal guards to live in if they didn't live with family in the city or were on an extended guard tour. The building also hosted a meeting room, the command center for the royal guards, and training rooms. One training room was room to train in sword fighting, since the guards did carry swords on them. Although quirks are used a lot, swords are still deadly weapons if they get close enough. Also, if they were too close to the royal family, some quirks couldn't be used to defend the family, so swords or guns became the main weapon. Vince then leads Izuku into one special room. This room can be entered via the palace via a special area or via the royal guard building. It's the Royal Command Room. This is where military leaders, royal guards, police, empire guards, and the royal family meet and deal with situations that go across the empire. There are smaller command stations across the entire empire, but this is the main location and it requires certain access to get into it. We're going into here to have them registered you into the Empire's system and have your fingerprints and eyes registered for all systems so you can access anything you wish, stated Vince. Izuku was amazed at the size but realized that the Empire was large. Vince did also say that even if this place was taken out somehow, that the Empire could still function since they have spare buildings like this spread across the Empire. Soon after, about 30 minutes, Izuku had been set up in the system of the Empire as the prince, and now he could access any government files that he wanted to or send out orders for certain things. Vince then leads Izuku back to the palace since it was close to lunchtime and his parents would be waiting for him there. They arrived at the royal family private dining room. Here, Izuku found his parents just sitting down as they entered. "Welcome, son. I take it Vince helped you get around the palace and learn some of the locations. I know it will take time to get used to it though," stated Izuku's father. Everyone was stunned and Izuku was confused. The other guards started to move towards Izuku, which put him on guard until they all fell to one knee and put one arm across their chest to their shoulder and greeted him. "Greetings, Your Highness, Izuku Weston," they stated all at once. Izuku was shocked. Then the Empire guard named Keith got up and kept an arm across his chest to his shoulder. "The ring has verified that you are the missing heir. Will you please return with us to the Westwin military ship to return to your parents and your empire, or do you need to go somewhere else first?" Keith asked while keeping his position. I don't understand. How am I the missing prince? Just 5 minutes ago, I'm running from the Japanese police and heroes for escaping them since I've been framed for being a traitor to the Hero Society, and now you are telling me that I'm a prince," Izuku stated. The guards tensed when he said he was being chased by the Japanese government. Keith acted right away. "We can explain more, but please get into our cars if you are indeed being chased by the law. They can't touch you in those vehicles since they have diplomatic immunity. You will have it also in the future, but you need to return to the Empire first for that and be registered with the government. We can protect you and keep you safe. So please, just get in the car so we can explain more details. We can't lose you again, sir," Keith stated with a determined look. He refused to let his empire's prince go missing again and worst be captured by the Japanese government. Soon they heard police sirens and this forced Izuku to act. He agreed to get in the car and they all moved quickly. One guard ripped off the fabric that hanged off them and laid it over Izuku's head to hide his hair since it was long enough for it. Most of them surrounded him since they were a bit taller and could hide his body. As the police were coming, Izuku was put in the car. The police car came to a stop and asked them if they saw anyone with green hair, and Keith stated no. The cop was about to ask more questions, but Keith turned around and got in the car when the cop ordered him to stop. "Sir, you need to stop. I have more questions," stated the officer. Keith turned around and looked at the officer. "Wrong. I'm here on a diplomatic mission from my government, and me and my men have diplomatic immunity. Now, we must be off since our military transport ship will need to leave dock soon," Keith stated and just got in the car, which took off right away without waiting since Keith was the last member to get in. Third POV. It has been only a week so far, but Izuku was starting to get used to the royal palace. He would though sometimes sneak into the kitchen and cook his own meals without anyone knowing about it. He did get caught a few times and the staff gave him a "why are you taking our jobs?" look. Izuku hated getting those looks. He was so used to cooking and doing everything on his own that he was having trouble relying on all of these people now. His parents did set him up with a therapist that works for the royal family. They normally work with the royal guards since the family doesn't exactly see combat or fighting much since the family does all of the political work in foreign diplomacy. However, due to Izuku's past, the therapist for the royal guards was assigned to Izuku to help him handle his mental health issues. They knew Izuku had at least some due to the panic attack he had on the first day. As such, they hope he would be able to make some progress as his life goes on in a better home situation. Izuku did like to watch the royal guards train. They were interesting, to say the least, since they did not rely on quirks to fight. To them, the quirks can be a hindrance to their job since the royal guards of the palace are near the family and can't use their quirks all of the time. Instead, they rely on swords, guns, and quirkless combat. Izuku though wanted to get his quirk under control so he could understand how to use it. He still wished to save people and he still had some of the desire to do so physically. As such, he had talked to his parents and they reluctantly agreed to train him with that idea in mind, so if he ever found someone in danger while out he could help. They made him promise to let his guards or other people handle it first before he stepped in. The reason Izuku could step in wasn't the fact that he was a prince, but due to the Empire laws. The Empire embraced quirks in their daily lives for the most part. If you used it for crimes, then you were arrested like anything else. However, you could apply for a quirk usage permit that would allow an individual to use their quirks in their individual life outdoors. As such, if you had a wing quirk that allowed you to fly, then you didn't have to be in law enforcement to fly. You just had to pay the annual fee for the quirk permit and stay within the rules and regulations. For someone that could fly, they were not permitted to fly into other people's homes, balconies, or fly too far into the sky where planes would be or fly near airports. Otherwise, they could fly anywhere else they wanted to. If you had a speed quirk, then you could use it to get to work faster than public transport if you had a permit. You were also allowed to step in and help people that were attacked. You could not go out and purposely search for crimes, but if you walked past an alleyway, then you could stop a mugger if you felt comfortable doing so. If you purposely went looking for crimes, then you would be arrested as a vigilante. Overall, the Empire was far more relaxed on their quirk use laws. Izuku, being a prince, didn't require him to have a permit since he was a part of the royal family, and most laws exclude them except things like murder, rape, robbery. Otherwise, Izuku could go or do about anything as long as it didn't cause problems for other people. Then his parents and the council would crack down on him. Izuku decided to leave the Royal Guard's training and go talk to his parents. His parents told him that he would start quirk training soon, but he would also be assigned personal Royal Guards that would be with him for almost all things he needed. These men would come from the Palace Guards since they are the strongest and most of the time longest serving guards they have. As such, they would be able to protect Izuku the best. After about a 5-minute walk, Izuku arrived at his mother's office, where she spends most of her day if she doesn't need to go leave for any events. He knocked on the door and was called in. "Ah, sweetheart, perfect timing. We were about to have someone bring you to us. We've picked out the fire team of royal guards that will be assigned to you," Izuku's mother Mary stated. Izuku walked in and saw his father and 4 other individuals standing there in royal guard outfits. If anyone ever wonders where I get these, I get them off DeviantArt or googling Boku no Hero OC. This provides a lot of stuff like this. I want you to meet your Royal Guards fire team. A fire team is made up of 4 individuals, while a squad has around 10 people, I think. They are some of the younger ones we have. They are all in their late 20s or early 30s and will be able to blend in more with you when you go to places, because a much older man like Vince would look weird following you into a mall, Izuku's mother stated. Izuku then introduced himself and they introduced themselves. They told Izuku that he could call them either by their Royal Guard codenames or their real names, whichever suited him more. Izuku spent a few minutes talking to them before he remembered one of the other things he wanted to talk to his mother about. Mother, I was wondering when I could start my quirk control training," Izuku asked. Mary nodded her head and then spoke. "That's part of why they are here. They will help you do that. They have also been informed about the entire one for all things, so they know you do have some experience using a quirk, but it was a foreign quirk to your body. We still need to have you visit the medical staff sooner or later to see if anything can be healed in your body to make your arms better due to all of the damage. Anyway, they will escort you out with a squad of other Royal Guards to a Royal Guard training ground so you can start learning your quirk," Mary stated. Izuku thanked her and hugged her, which made her happy that he is starting to get to that level of physical contact with them. "Also, don't forget, the month is coming to an end and we will be enrolling you in the Royal Academy soon. You have already started your lessons with the librarian this week, but still, remember you will be going back to school for the remainder of your high school life," Francis stated. Izuku nodded his head and followed his new guards out of the room into a convoy of vehicles waiting for him outside. Izuku got into the car and saw one of the local newspapers was inside the car on the side of the door. Izuku knew his father went out today and this was likely his. Izuku started to read it while the car was driving away. Izuku saw the news about him being found. The announcement read, "Rumors confirmed by the Royal Palace that the missing Prince Izuku was discovered and returned to the Empire a few weeks ago. Sources from the palace stated that the prince will not make any official public appearances for at least 1 year so that he can adjust to life in the palace and get used to undertaking his royal duties as the prince," stated the headline, which was long. Then he read more into the paper and how it talked about the entire empire would be celebrating in 2 weeks to mark his return, and that the Empire Council has declared the day of his return as a national holiday. This made Izuku shake his head. Really, the day I was returned into the empire became a national holiday. I really need to get used to the weird things people do. I'm glad the country loves my family though, Izuku said without really meaning to say it out loud. The guard spoke up, which shocked Izuku since he forgot they were there. "Sorry, you guys were really silent so I forgot you were here," Izuku said with a small blush on his face. "They just chucked. That is one of our job requirements, making it seem like we aren't near you so you can focus on your work or what you are doing," stated Thunder. Soon after about 35 minutes of driving, they had exited the city and were heading towards an open area training site for the Royal Guards. Izuku really wanted to know what his quirk really was, since they only know it's likely a gravity control quirk. After another 10 minutes of driving, they arrived at an open area. The guards told Izuku that this was an old military training area, but as the city expanded they moved away since it is only 45 minutes away from the city and the government likes to be around 1 hour or so away so people aren't bothered by the training with guns or vehicles. They all got out of the car and moved to an area. The guards knew that it was some sort of gravity control quirk based on the notes, so they had a lot of large and small rocks prepared for Izuku to test his quirk on. If they needed larger things, then they would get them later on. For now, though, it was time to get some basic quirk control in and see what exactly Izuku can do with his quirk right now. Izuku went and sat on one of the flatter rocks and just mediated and tried to feel for his quirk like he did on the ship. After about 2 minutes of trying to feel it, he did. He described it again to the guards and they gave him some instructions on how to use it. You say you feel like the center of gravity, the center of the universe. As such, I want you to let the energy you wield flow out of you, and I want you to imagine as if the rocks around you no longer have weight on them," stated Raven. After Izuku tried this for a bit, he couldn't get anything. Trice gave him another idea of trying. Try feeling for energy that is already outside of your body. If it is connected to gravity, then you might be able to directly affect other things' gravity within a range. So, focus on trying to feel any energy around you that is similar to the energy you feel inside yourself, Trice stated. After about 1 minute, Izuku felt something. "I feel it. It's similar to what I have inside but different slightly," Izuku stated. They then told him to just focus on the outside energy and trying to change the energy itself. After about 10 minutes, Izuku did it. He changed what the energy felt like, or more correctly, changed what the energy was doing. Instead of allowing it to press down on the rock, Izuku made the energy move away from the rock. Once he did that, he slowly opened his eyes and went to the rock, which confused the guard until they saw him lift the rock, which was not small in any way. The rock was about to Izuku's knees in height and weighed about 200 pounds just by itself. Yet, he lifted it easily without a problem. Once he did, it stayed floating in the air. Izuku had negated the gravity on the rock, and now it was moving due to him moving it. Izuku then let the energy go back to the rock after he moved away, and the rock fell straight down. Izuku explained what he did, and they understood that he had negated the Earth's gravity effects on the rock. It seems at the current moment you can negate the gravity of the Earth on objects. Let's see if you can make the Earth's gravity increase. Let's move to a tree nearby. I want you to see if you can feel the energy around it like how the rock had it. This time I would like you to try and bring more of the energy onto the tree, stated Retina. As such, that is what they did. It took Izuku a bit more time than just removing the gravity, but he did it after 15 minutes, and the tree pushed deeper into the ground until the trunk couldn't take the force anymore and snapped, causing the upper half to fall down on the ground. Everyone was shocked at the power Izuku had. Currently, as it stands, Izuku could alter the Earth's gravity effects on objects. This was very powerful in defensive ability and offensive ability if Izuku trains it correctly. They had Izuku focus on decreasing the amount of time it takes for him to remove the gravity for something. As it stands, it takes him 10 minutes to remove gravity and 15 minutes to increase gravity. It's not practical for combat at all currently as such. That needs to be his main area of focus before anything else. This was how Izuku spent the next 5 hours before they called it a day, since he would need to return for dinner soon. Izuku was able to get some progress in, and he was able to get his gravity reduction speed from 10 minutes to 8 minutes and his gravity increase from 15 minutes to 13 minutes. Izuku knew that he was years behind everyone else, and having spent so much time for one for all just consumed more time. He couldn't complain since he now had his birth quirk, and if he could get the time down it would be amazing for self-defense and defense of others, since he could render a fight to a stop within seconds by increasing gravity on someone and making it so they can't move. Soon they got back in the cars and started the trip back to the royal palace. Izuku thanked his personal guards for coming along and helping him train, though he did have a question for them. "As my personal guards, what all will you be doing with me?" Izuku asked. They looked at each other and then back at him. "More or less everything, sir. If you enter a public restroom, we males will follow along while the females guard the outside area. If you go to the beach, we go to the beach. If you go out and eat at a restaurant, we will join you. 1 or 2 of us might sit at the table with you while the others are at another table with eyesight on it. It all depends on you. In the palace, we will be near you for the most part, but not as close as if you were out of the palace. If you wish to train, then we will be the ones training you. Otherwise, your life will go as normal, or rather as normal as royalty can go," stated Raven. Izuku nodded his head and thanked them again. Soon they had arrived back at the palace, and Izuku was wanting to inform his parents of his progress. He asked Raven if they would happen to know where they might be this time of day. Trice then pulled out a phone. Based on their schedule, they should be moving towards the dining hall right now. Overall, they normally stick to the planned schedule unless something happens to throw it off, which most of the time all royal guards are informed of when they got off schedule or if they go somewhere, since one guard is normally always near a royal member to keep track of their safety, Trice stated. Izuku then headed to the personal dining room for the royal family and found his parents there. They saw him come in and asked him how his day went training. He informed them of what exactly his quirk can do right now and how it's perfect for self-defense and defense of others if he can get the time down to seconds instead of being minutes. His parents congratulated him and told him that he was doing a good job, which made Izuku feel so happy. "Man, it's so nice to have someone to come home to and tell them how my day went. It's also nice to be told that I did a good job," Izuku thought as he started to eat dinner. Izuku asked them how their day went, and they said it was more or less normal. They were dealing with requests for royal audiences since some old nobles wanted to meet the prince, but they responded that unless it's an actual matter, the royal family wouldn't let their son meet anyone until after the 1-year mark, since he wanted to adjust his life. Everyone had sent replies back that they understood and would request again after the 1-year mark. Izuku really hoped he would make some friends when he started at the academy next month. Third POV. The end of the month had arrived, and it was now time for Izuku to attend the Westwin Royal Academy. The academy does have a set uniform for all of their students to wear, which was reddish. Izuku thought it was out of some anime but just laughed at that thought. Since the academy was the Royal Academy, they used a shade of red but didn't use a ruby red for the uniform, since the color of ruby red is considered an offense to the royal family if you aren't a royal member of the empire. There is no law against it, but citizens of the empire will look at you with disgust or might refuse to serve as travelers that refuse to remove or hide anything that is ruby red. As such, Izuku put the uniform on and was prepared for his first day of school. It was the middle of the semester currently, since Izuku got framed at the start of the first semester of his second year in Japan. Luckily, based on the results from the Royal Librarian, Izuku isn't really far behind at all. Instead, he's just slightly ahead of schedule and should be able to integrate into the school without any foreseeable problems. As such, Izuku made his way down for breakfast with his parents before he would set off on his day. As they were eating, Izuku's father spoke up. "Remember, son, per your request we have you shown as a transfer student on the Royal Scholarship Program. No one will know you are from the royal family unless you let it out or until the announcement day," Francis stated. Izuku was happy with this. He didn't want people to treat him differently because he was from the royal family. His parents had the scholarship director informed of their plan, and the director made the transfer happen. It was going to be shown that Izuku was still using his former fake name Izuku Midoriya, since news from Japan isn't really shown in the empire much, especially anything to do with heroes, because the country doesn't have actual heroes, so most just ignore that type of news. Izuku was shocked to learn that All Might isn't really cared for that much in the empire. People like him, and what he did is the so-called symbol of peace, but he had no real effect on the empire since crime is handled by law enforcement and not heroes like All Might. Most of his fans are little kids that have seen his movies or TV shows with him as a character. Izuku broke down in a fit of laughter when he learned that All Might was really only known in the empire as a TV character. His parents just laughed with him as well. Soon breakfast came to an end and it was time for Izuku to leave. He would be dropped off near the school, and one of the royal guards would follow behind from a distance to ensure he walked into the school. The car would drive relatively normal speed in front of him at a distance before parking on the side of the road to pick up the other guard. This way, no one would notice he came from the car, and it wouldn't be marked with the royal family seal either. As such, that is how Izuku found himself dropped off at the Westwin Royal Academy. The academy wasn't directly in the capital city, since they trained quirks as part of the Empire Guard's training, and the other classes could freely train quirks during their breaks as well. As such, to ensure the academy had enough space, it was about 30 minutes away from the city, and public transport in the form of a train would go from the city to the academy on a scheduled basis of every 15 minutes. The train only stops was the city and the academy. As such, it would leave and arrive every 15 minutes on the dot and just keep running that loop all day and night, since it was powered by solar panels on the train and stations, which provided enough energy to run. Izuku, though, would be dropped off by a car near the academy, and it would appear he walked, which isn't strange since there are some smaller towns near it as well that are within walking distance. As such, their plan of dropping Izuku off near and him just walking in with a guard a bit away, and the car further ahead, would work. His parents said once he gets comfortable and used to the capital, they would have him dropped off at the train station, and one of the guards would ride it to the academy in a school uniform but would get into the car and leave so people didn't suspect anything. Though this would have to stop once the announcement happened, since his public transportation would be restricted to being with the guards after the announcement in a year. After being dropped off, Izuku walked into the academy and made his way to the administrative building, which was the first set of buildings when you walked in. He asked for directions to the principal and soon found himself waiting outside of their door. After about 5 minutes, he was called in and was now meeting with the principal of the school, Wilson Cranford. After about 5 minutes, he was called in and was now meeting with the principal of the school, Wilson Cranford. "Good afternoon, Izuku Midoriya. My name is Wilson Cranford and I am the principal of this Royal Academy. I'm glad to see you ready to get started with your day. Now, let us go over some ground rules. You are entering during the middle of the semester and will need to catch up on some work. We expect you to ask for help if you need it. As a student of this academy, you are here on the Royal Scholarship due to having good exam scores. As such, you are expected to keep your grades high. If they fall, you will be expected to leave any extra groups you might join to focuses on the grades. If they don't improve, you could be expected to be charged a portion of the tuition or be removed from the school, since we only want those that are determined to do good in this school," stated Cranford. Izuku nodded his head and just said he understood. After a bit more talking, they headed off to tour the campus main section so Izuku would know his way around the building. They first stopped and looked into a few classrooms. Overall, the classrooms have more advanced technology due to the Empire being far more advanced than in other countries. This allows us more freedom in how we teach. As you can see, each room has a main projector in the center that can create 3D objects and pictures that people can study more visual details instead of just looking at an image in a book. Cranford stated. Izuku was impressed. Izuku knew the palace had similar technology for the royal guards in the command center in a few of the rooms, but it was nice seeing it used for education as well. Izuku then was taken to the school lunchroom. It had a large amount of seating on the main floor, and there was also a second floor with a staircase that you could use to get to it where more seating was located. The lunchroom had different food options that you could eat. This is very nice for those that have restrictive diets. After looking around a bit, they then headed towards the next area. The principal explained that this area was a training arena that the Empire guards would show off their skills and challenge each other in front of the general student body sometimes. I don't know how much you know of the history of the Empire, but there used to be actual noble houses that are now called the Old Noble Houses. These old nobles are still heavily loyal to the ruling family and wish to still serve the Empire. They do this by joining the Empire Guards and using it as a method to join the Royal Guards or stay as Empire Guards. Some of the old nobles do join politics as well. As such, the Empire Guards here at this academy tend to have more old nobles' children in it than the other academies. This leads to a lot of duels when one child from one old noble house somehow insults another child from another old noble house. This is a safe method for them to end their disputes they are arguing about, stated Principal Cranford. Izuku was interested in this arena and asked if only those in the Empire Guards could fight someone in it or could anyone. The principal said there was no rule against others, but it was heavily advised against due to the lack of more formal training. If you enter the arena, you sign a disclosure stating the school isn't responsible for your wounds. Even the students in the Empire Guard section must sign it, stated the principal. The arena was a decent size, and Izuku also learned that quirk use in it is looked down upon but not forbidden. That was interesting, but also made sense since the Empire Guards and Royal Guards tend to use a sword a lot when quirks can't be used. Next, they stopped into another building that had the Academy Library in it. Overall, it's one of the largest libraries in the Empire with a lot of books from the old centuries and current information, but it still doesn't have anything on the Royal Library though. A lot of the time we will borrow books from the Royal Palace and make a copy or get a copy of their copies that they have made, stated the principal, and Izuku could agree that it was a large place but still didn't have anything on the Royal Palace Library at all. They then went to some of the club rooms. One club was an archery club that looked like it was from Japan. I think you noticed it is similar to a Japanese archery room. They did have a good idea for the setup, so we just copied it. Don't try to redo something that has already been perfected, stated Principal Cranford. They then went to the next building and Izuku saw a chess club, some other random clubs, a quirk theory club. Wait, what? Izuku was now in love with the club called Quirk Theory, and the principal noticed that. He gave Izuku the form that would allow him to sign up for it. There were some musical clubs and other clubs that Izuku wouldn't be interested in at all, so he ignored them. Overall, the place was amazing, and there were also some areas that Izuku didn't get shown since they were really only for the Empire Guard training. Others could go and watch, but most didn't. Though Izuku did learn as a side fact that they had a horse riding club that anyone could join, but most didn't since most didn't enjoy it. Though a lot of the older noble houses' children did it since it was a tradition to know how to ride a horse long ago, since the knights would ride horses into battle sometimes. Izuku was tempted to join it but consider thinking more about it later. God, a lot of things that UA never had. This school is far better. If UA spends some of the money that they did on robots in the biases entrance exam, they would be a better school if they invested it into clubs and stuff for students. Izuku. Soon the first warning bell went off. Izuku had come really early to get a tour, and it seems they had just hit the time for classes. We made a good amount of progress. The rest of the campus you can explore by yourself. Just ask for directions if you ever get lost, Principal Cranford said as he showed Izuku his first class. The thing is that with this school is that everyone regardless of the department will have the same general classes mixed together. Their specialized classes are in the afternoon, when other courses like general education have more elective classes instead of specialized classes like support or business or the Empire Guard classes. Izuku knocked on the door and was called into the class with the principal. Good afternoon, everyone. Today you will be having a transfer student that has arrived in the country recently but has passed the exam high enough to get the Royal Scholarship. As such, the school will let him join now and make up the work for the previous weeks of the semester. I will leave it to you, Professor. Have a good day, everyone, stated the principal as he left. Izuku bowed his head and waved to everyone. The teacher had him introduce himself to everyone. "Hello, I am Izuku Midoriya, and as the principal stated, I will be joining you all from now on. Thank you for having me," Izuku said with a smile. The teacher, whose name was Carl, told Izuku to sit in the empty seat. He did give Izuku a sheet with everyone's picture and name so he could start remembering them. As such, the class got started, and this was the start of Izuku's first official day in the school. Overall, the class went at a relative speed that Izuku could keep up with. His notes were detailed and to the point. Izuku had learned how to take better notes after 1 week with the librarian, who would go at a fast pace, and it was hard to keep up. As such, he adapted. Soon the first class came to an end, and Izuku got up to get a drink since they had a 10-minute break between each class to let them walk around and get the blood flowing since they would be seating most of the time. After returning from getting a drink, Izuku just sat back down and looked over the class pictures for a bit to start remembering their names. Izuku noticed that 60% of the class was from the Empire Guards section, with 15% from the support section, another 15% from business, and the remaining 10% were from the general education students like himself. He did also know that he was the sole student on the Royal Scholarship in this class, and everyone came from rich families, but only a few of them were from the old noble houses. The next teacher came into the classroom, and Izuku got to work on taking notes. This routine kept going until it was lunchtime, where Izuku got up and headed to the lunchroom to eat. He was doubtful he was going to make friends so easily with most of his classmates. He knew there would likely be some bias from people from rich families against those from poorer families. Izuku was not stupid, and he did it this way for a purpose, to ensure he didn't make friends with people like that. He didn't want fake friends and only wanted those that could look past titles and money. As such, today he ate lunch by himself, and this was fine with him. Soon lunch came to an end, and it was time to go back to one more class before everyone went to their specialized or elective classes for the day, and then there would be club activities in the afternoon. The afternoon classes passed quickly and were just like the classes during the day. Izuku didn't have any problem with keeping up with the class and was actually working on some of the old homework that he would need to complete to catch up with everyone else. As the day came to an end, Izuku got up and was prepared to go turn in his homework and also turn in the sign-up sheet for the quirk theory class. He was hoping to make some friends in that club. As Izuku was about to leave, a person called out for him. "Hey, new kid, wait up a second," stated a voice. Based on the information Izuku had, this person's name was Lance Roland. He was also a child of the old noble houses. Izuku wondered why he wanted to talk to Izuku. "Yes," Izuku said as he turned to face him head on. "My name is Lance Roland, and I was wondering if you wanted to eat with me tomorrow during lunch with my friends, since I noticed you were alone today at lunch," Lance asked. Izuku was a bit surprised that he had asked. He was also the first person to ask. Izuku decided to take a leap of faith and see where this would take him. As such, Izuku agreed to it, and it was decided that he would eat lunch with Lance and his friends the next day. Izuku then headed to the staff room in the administrative building and tuned in the homework he already completed, and also submitted the Quirk Theory Club paperwork. The teachers were happy that he was being so proactive in completing his old homework, and also the fact that he wanted to be active with a club. They approved the join request with the club advisor and told him that the club meets every Tuesday and Thursday. As such, this is how Izuku's day came to an end, and he had completed his first day at the Westwin Royal Academy. Third POV. It has been a month and a half since Izuku escaped from police custody, and his former classmates and teachers were all wondering where he was. They were also wondering if he would come after them, since he was now a wanted villain. Some still refused to believe that he betrayed them, but the others would use the fact that he escaped police custody as more proof that he was a villain. The detective with the lie detector quirk was pissed with All Might and Nezu for not bringing him in first before the news got out of him being suspected or arrested, since he could have confirmed if it was true or not. The day he returned from a police case, he ripped into Nezu. "Are you kidding me? You arrested him with lacking evidence. His face isn't even seen in the video at all either," stated the detective. The detective also pointed out that anyone could be in Izuku's outfit. He then also pointed out that the League has a member with a quirk that allows them to transform into people, which means that it could have been Toga in his outfit. The staff tended at these points but trusted Nezu to have been right, since he has never been wrong before. So there was no reason he would be wrong on this matter. Right. Well, wrong. All of the staff could see Nezu wasn't smiling anymore. This concerned them. "Nezu, please tell me that you were 100% sure without any second thoughts when you accused Midoriya," Aizawa stated with a glare that made some of them flinch back. Nezu just looked at him and started to talk. "I was 100% certain when I made the decision, but I might have acted prematurely out of fear of him. He is smart and he was strong with his quirk. Just look at how he has stayed off our radar for nearly 2 months now," Nezu stated. This shocked all of them. All Might was just stunned. He had made the decision to not back Izuku based on Nezu always being right and thinking everything through. Now he just learned he might have truly betrayed his former protege. He also got Mirio the quirk thinking he would easily be able to use it, but he is having trouble. He has tried spreading it like Izuku did and it has only worked to a point. He is unable to keep it active for a long time like Izuku. He can control a similar amount as Izuku did as well, which confuses them since Mirio has more muscles than Izuku does. As such, All Might was really confused and was starting to regret not supporting his student until the detective could do a questioning, but he also acted on fear as well since he had a horrible thought that Izuku was a plan of All for One. This made him act irrationally. Now he was paying for it. When Izuku's words from that day came back to him, he declared Mirio a false holder of One for All. Does One for All itself agree with those words? Is that why Mirio can't use the quirk as well as we think he should? Thought All Might. Soon, the meeting came to an end and they decided to keep quiet about their theory of Izuku possibly being innocent until the detective could question him and prove it or not. Yue was already being attacked in the media over Izuku being a mole and him being on the run. They called in other heroes to try and find him, and the detective did a lot of questioning on people to see how they could find him. After a lot of work and another half a month passing, they found out that he had met with an info broker who was selling quirk analysis services of Izuku's to villains, and the heroes were shocked at the impact he had. The staff could see why Nezu was scared because the power between gangs had shifted due to Izuku. After questioning a handful of people that underground heroes detained, they had gotten a possible safe house location where Izuku was staying at. Though they didn't know that the safe house owner had a lot of people in his pocket, so the moment the search warrant went through he knew about it and had warned Izuku to run. This resulted in a game of cat and mouse, and it was a game that they had lost. They tracked Izuku on some cameras but had lost him as he ran into an area without cameras. The problem was he never reappeared on cameras around the area, so they don't know where he went. Wind of the failed raid had hit the news and Yue and heroes got another hit in the media. There was quite a bit that they retrieved from the house, which included all of his work he did. Nezu noticed none of his work was on heroes. Did I really make a mistake? Nezu thought, since even being on the run Izuku didn't sell info on heroes, which would have earned him more business. They also found a bit of money hidden under a floor which was around 500k yen. No news of Izuku Midoriya was ever found since that day. It was as if he disappeared off the face of the earth. They also monitored villain gangs but didn't notice any shifts in power which would have indicated him being active. It truly was like he disappeared from the earth. In other news unrelated to Izuku, or so they thought, the Westwin Empire refused to renew its expiring treaties with Japan. These treaties included some ceremonial ones and some impactful ones like a few trade treaties. Japan attempted to get an answer, but the Westwin embassy refused to make a statement. The world was wondering if the empire was giving Japan the cold shoulder for a while, and what Japan did to get it, or was it more serious and the empire was no longer going to have relations with Japan. This would signal a change in foreign policy for the empire, which could spell troubles for the country since the empire is the largest economy and military power in the world. Also, a lack of support by the empire could leave Japan open for attack by other countries that feared incurring the wrath of the empire for breaking the long-standing peace, since there haven't been any major conflicts since 100 years ago, when quirks became accepted and people focused on those instead. This doesn't mean that there weren't any conflicts. Most were in the shadows or limited to bordering nations and were resolved through peace talks that the empire had brokered themselves. As such, if Japan is being cut off by the empire, then it could become a free game for others to attack. The empire just refused to make statements, or their statements weren't really saying anything important. As such, Japan started to work on plans to try and improve its relationship with the empire. One such plan included sending a delegation, but that would wait until they see how the empire acts in roughly the next year or so. Now, while the heroes were busy doing their things, Izuku had made it to the empire already and has been there for a bit of time by now. He has also already been in his new school for months now and was adjusting to his new life. However, while Izuku and the heroes were going about their lives, the villains were on the move and were aiming to grow stronger. The League of Villains had ended up making contact with a rival organization called the Paranormal Liberation Army. They wanted far more freedom to use quirks how the user wanted, but had negative qualities like looking down on those with weaker or no quirks. This didn't sit well with Shigaraki, who had become far more developed than before. He was no longer as childish as he was and planned things out more now. He had gotten the doctor's help and had just gotten All for One's old bodyguard under his control. It was at that moment Shigaraki received a phone call from Jiren. He answered the call, but it wasn't Jiren that answered. Instead, it was a new voice. The voice started to talk. "Hello, I'm Redistro, the leader of the Paranormal Liberation Army. It took a bit of work finding the code to the phone since he wouldn't give it. We had to hack into it," Redistro stated. Shigaraki didn't like the sound of that at all. He asked what happened to Jiren and was told he was still alive but missing some digits on his hands from refusing to give information about any of his clients. This pissed Shigaraki off since Jiren has helped them a lot. Now the reason for this call. You and the League members are to come to our location and surrender to us or refuse, and we send your location to the heroes. That forest you're in looks nice with whoever's that giant is, Redestro stated. The League members all froze at this statement. How did they know where they were at? Redestro gave them an answer. They had satellites that allowed them to spy on all of Japan. They were given a timeline on when they were expected to arrive, or else they would turn their location in. Though, if you feel strong enough to take an army on, then you're free to attack and try to get your info broker back, stated Redestro stated with a laugh before he ended the call. They had 1 week to decide on what to do and how to plan. Shigaraki had the doctor teleport them so they could plan in a hidden area. The League members were sitting around planning, thinking of what to do with this new information. Twice emphatically demands that they save Jiren, who has been a huge supporter of the League. As they were arguing, Shigaraki spoke up and that he had a plan. He radioed the doctor and asked him about how long it would before the giant Gigantomachia wakes up. Though Mr. Compress answers with 2 hours and 35 minutes answer. Soon, Shigaraki announced his plan. They would use Gigantomachia to wipe out the Metal Liberation Army and in turn, use the Metal Liberation Army to weak Gigantomachia down so that they could defeat him. The doctor applauded Shigaraki for his underhanded method. As such, the League begins their plans and the doctor warps them to a hill near Dekia City where they will meet the Metal Liberation Army. Soon as they approach, they were met by a pro-hero that guided them into the town to meet with Redestro. Just more proof that the hero society is corrupt. They allow so many heroes to be on the payroll of a villain organization and never found out about it, Shigaraki thought. This only solidified his resolve to restart society in Japan into something new. Something better. Soon, the League members are ambushed by some of the Metal Liberation Army members, and the fighting kicked off. While the members had started to fight, in the central tower, Jiren was with Redestro. Jiren warned Redestro that the fight wouldn't go how he thinks it will and he will lose. Redestro was impressed by Jiren's loyalty but refused to believe that they would lose with their numbers. The fighting kept going on and they were recording the fights because the Metal Liberation Army wanted to use it as more proof that the citizens should be able to use quirks in the absence of heroes. However, the Metal Liberation Army members were losing the fight and the League members were actually getting stronger since Twice was able to overcome his psychological trauma by making clones of himself. As this was all going on, the Dr. Daruma Yujiko has been watching and listening into everything. He was interested in how it was going and was amazed at the League's dedication. He decided to lend a helping hand, not with the Namus but with waking up Gigantomachia early. He awoke him by using the voice of All for One and then ordered the giant to find the League and go to their location. Gigantomachia erupts from his slumber and sniffs the air for the traces of Shigaraki and started on his path to the League. Back in Deku City, the League members were pushing their way through with the Twice clones. The Metal Liberation Army was throwing bodies at the League, but the Twice clones protected the core members. They had clones of the core members made which escaped into the tower to deal with Redestro while the real ones rest up and save energy. After some work, they find Redestro and Jiren in a room. Redestro said he had no reason to end Jiren but would have Twice kept making clones, but Dabai and Compress attacked him. Redestro wiped out most of Twice clones in one move, but Twice still made another clone which had gotten to Jiren while the other clones of the core members fought Redestro. Twice discovered a sight that he was horrified to see. Jiren's right hand was mutilated and Jiren apologized that he wasn't able to keep the Metal Liberation Army from obtaining information about them from him, but Twice assures him that he isn't guilty of anything. The fight between Redestro and the clones had come to an end and Redestro talked to the only clone left besides Twice. It was Shigaraki's clone. Redestro started to talk to the clone of Shigaraki and talks about how he plans to continue with Destro's legacy, and asks the clone of Shigaraki if he really thinks that the ambitions of his ragtag group, whose only purpose is destruction, can possibly outweigh the army's dreams. Shigaraki's clone, however, ignores the question. Shigaraki tells Twice clone to create a cushion for Jiren. Twice was confused until the Shigaraki clone explained why. Shigaraki clone was stuck in the window frame after Redestro's first attack. From this position, he could see the real version of himself. He stated that his real version was going to touch the tower. And that is what happened. As soon as the real one puts his hand on the wall, decay spreads and the building collapses completely. It was gone. The central tower of the Metal Liberation Army was gone in only a few moments. As the dust settled, Redestro looked up since he had survived the fall and he saw Shigaraki standing in front of him. Redestro quirks work on stress and he gets stronger the more stressed he is. As such, he bulked up and attempted to end Shigaraki who was in front of him, but as the fight was going on, it seemed as if Shigaraki was awaking full control of his quirk. During the fight, Shigaraki was able to land 2 fingers onto Redestro and decay a portion of his finger. This caused Redestro to become more cautious in the fight. Shigaraki was going through some of his locked memories of his older sister before she died. He remembered how his mother took care of him and loved him. Soon, Shigaraki dashed forward and realized he was far quicker and agile than he used to be. Ridestro attempted to end the fight by bulking up more and was able to send Shigaraki flying in an attack. Ridestro asked Shigaraki when he got up if he still wished to only destroy everything. Canon Divergence Shigaraki looked at Ridestro and said he would destroy everything to rebuild it from the ground up. The current future is unneeded and must be destroyed for a better future to be created. A new nation that will support those regardless of quirk or lack of a quirk. A nation where people don't have to rely on a hero to come save them and that people aren't just random bystanders that ignore a child cry for help, Shigaraki stated. The fight kept going on for a while more, but Gigantomachia had started rampaging through the Meta Liberation Army. This started to bring the fight to a close and caused enough distraction for Shigaraki to land a decaying hit on Ridestro. With that touch, his armor started to decay and he was forced to cut his legs off or be decayed entirely. Soon, the rest of the Meta Liberation Army arrived and tried to save the commander but was told to stand down. Ridestro admitted their defeat and surrendered to Shigaraki. You claim you wish to destroy and bring about a new nation. We will follow you then since you have bested us, Ridestro stated. This brought an end to the battle between the League of Villains and the Meta Liberation Army. It was also the day the new army was born as Shigaraki became the new leader of the Paranormal Liberation Front. 1 week later, Shigaraki stood in front of all the army and announced the new name and then announced their goal. We will create a new nation. A nation where people aren't judged based on their quirk or lack of a quirk. They aren't ignored when they are in trouble. That people don't need to wait for a hero to save themselves or for others to help save them. We will give birth to a new nation, a new future, Shigaraki yelled out and everyone cheered. This was the start of massive change in Japan, and the heroes only started to get wind of it due to a spy that they had planted in the ranks. Now the question was, who was going to win in the end and take control of Japan, and how would the world react to the uprising of so many people who claimed to be representing a group participating in a civil war and not just being normal villains the Japanese government claims them to be. Third POV. It has been a few months since Izuku was enrolled in the Westwin Royal Academy and Izuku was enjoying his time. There have been some ups and there have also been some downs during his months. The semester was coming to an end and it would be the end of the first semester of his second year of high school. Izuku has long caught up with all of his homework that he was given for the time he wasn't in the school. And the teachers were happy with his progress since he has kept his grades high and were also involved in extra activities after school. This activity was being part of the Quirk Theory Club. In this club, he would meet with some of the other members and they would debate different quirk theory topics or how quirks could be used to better the Empire overall. Izuku was also enjoying his time with Lance and his friends. All of them were members of the Empire Guard Academy section, so Izuku would sometimes go and watch their training events over the past few months. The members enjoyed their time with Izuku and Izuku would use his knowledge on quirk theory to suggest different ideas to them that some of them were able to use and apply. Though there were some other people that belonged to the Empire Guard section that didn't like Izuku's presence. One day an incident happened when a third-year student that Izuku knew was from an old noble house came over and started talking to Izuku. However, Izuku knew this individual wasn't from one of the night houses, but from one of the houses that had a lot of money or connections long ago and somehow maintained their position as an old noble house. Hey, poor kid, why are you always coming here? Didn't you know poor saps like you won't ever get anywhere in life and your presence is disgusting? The older student called out. Izuku saw the few friends that this third year hanged out with were looking smugly. Izuku knew that none of the friends were from any old noble houses except the third year that was talking to Izuku. Though, while Izuku was thinking all of this, he didn't realize that he was ignoring the third year student, which pissed the student off more. This resulted in the student pushing Izuku over onto the floor since he was sitting on a bleacher in the gym where the Empire Guards were currently training. Leon and his friends all started to come over, but the third year friends blocked their path. Leon told them to get out of the way, but they wouldn't. They flaunted the fact that they were going to listen to the child of a minster over some child of a knight. That is where I remember this third year from. His father is a low-level minister in one of the agencies for commerce. Seems we might need to look into the father if this is how the child acts, Izuku thought. Izuku was trying to get up when the third year yelled at Izuku again and kicked him down on the ground and placed his foot on Izuku's side to keep him down. You damn poor dogs think you can come to this school. I don't understand why the royal family lets the poor into this academy since it's meant to be for the nobles and wealthy families to make connections and maintain our power in this empire, stated the third year. It was at that moment that Izuku received help from another third-year student. The new third-year student kicked the other third year in the side and forced him off of Izuku. Izuku felt his heart skip a beat when he saw this and was a bit happy that someone was willing to stand up to the old noble. Izuku couldn't see the person's face yet as he stood up and thanked the third year. Though the third year did look back at Izuku and smiled at him, and when he did that, Izuku recognized the third-year student from some of the notes that he had to learn for his prince position. This new third year was from an old noble house as well that belonged to a knight household. The household was known as the Blakewell House, and this student was named Leon Blakewell. Leon Blakewell was the second-born son of the Blakewell household and wouldn't inherit the family and become the head. As such, most second-born children would go into the Empire Guards or try to go into the Royal Guards. Leon turned back around and glared at the other old noble child and the group of friends backing him. Get lost. You are a disgrace of an old noble household. Though that isn't surprising since you don't belong to a knight house, which are the ones that hold themselves with honor and dignity. The royal family wanted the empire to prosper, so they decided to let anyone in this academy so the overall empire would thrive and prosper, Leon stated. The noble got up and threatened Leon. It would be bad if your family has trouble with your business and they came under heavy scrutinization for no real reason. Now wouldn't it be? Stated the third year, and Izuku was truly angered at this point. He knew he would bring this up to his parents when he got home and have this student removed from the academy, and have his old noble status revoked and likely his family's as well if they are similar to him. Please, you think you scare me. My family has served this empire for a long time and has spilled blood for it. Do you think we will cower under threats that are so weak as that? Do remember that I can bring this up with the royal family and inform them that your house is trying to threaten others and treat others cruelly. This means that your old noble status would be risked in getting revoked, which means you lose a lot of privileges and position, Leon stated. The other student just cowered at that threat and decided to back off. After a few minutes to ensure that they left, Leon turned to Izuku and offered his hand to Izuku, which Izuku took. As Izuku got pulled up, Leon got a good look at Izuku. Well, isn't he cute? Thought Leon. Then he realized what he just thought and blushed a bit and decided to ignore that thought for a moment since he needed to make sure Izuku was alright. Would you like to go to the nurse to make sure you are not hurt? Leon asked, and Izuku just declined. I've had far worse than that. Not the strongest attacks or verbal abuse that I've had to deal with in my life due to discrimination, Izuku said, and the people in the room were concerned at that comment. Leon himself was really concerned that someone so kind as Izuku could suffer a lot of discrimination. I've seen him hang out with the second years a lot and I've never heard anything bad about him. He's always wanting to help others and has been suggesting ideas and theories to the second-year Empire Guards, which has made them much stronger and are able to rival the weaker end of the third years, thought Leon. He knew that he would want to get more information from Izuku later but knew not to push it right now. Lance came up and thanked Leon for the help since they had gotten blocked. Leon just said it was fine and offered Izuku his water so that he could take a drink. Izuku blushed a bit since it was going to be an indirect kiss. Bad Izuku, you bad. Don't fall for a guy just because he saved you. I don't even know if he is bi or gay, Izuku thought as he took a drink from the water bottle and thanked him. Leon noticed Izuku's blush and found it cute. Dear God, am I seriously having a gay panic when I've only met him? Thought Leon. Soon everyone got back to the training as Izuku stayed and did some of his homework and also did some more notes and quirk theory on the Empire Guard students' quirks as they practiced. Izuku also knew in the back of his mind that the moment he arrived home and his parents found out about today, they would go ballistic and want to deal with the offending old noble house. As such, Izuku was stalling his return home for as long as he could. However, about 30 minutes later he got a message from his fire team of royal guards requesting him to return to the palace on the next train so they could pick him up. Izuku sighed and said his goodbyes. Before he left though, Leon walked up to Izuku. Izuku, I was wondering if you would like to eat lunch with me tomorrow. You know, to get to know each other more and become friends, Leon stated with confidence and a smile, and Izuku just nodded dumbly as he stuttered out a sure. He then left and got to the train and calmed down. As he sat there on the train, he realized something he forgot about. Shit, the royal guards will see the bruise that I got from getting pushed down and hitting the ground, Izuku thought. They would go ballistic as well since they have become really protective of Izuku when his parents told Izuku his entire past. God, Izuku could remember how they would bring him cute stuffed animals to cuddle with all the time. They would also destroy anything they saw of All Might, which was kind of terrifying. They would purposely buy anything with All Might on it to just destroy it, and Izuku knew his parents were funding it. As Izuku was caught in his thoughts, he didn't realize that the 15-minute train ride had passed and he had arrived at the station. Well, got no time to hide the mark, Izuku thought as he got off the train and could see one royal guard in normal clothing at the station. The guard nodded their head and waited for Izuku to go down the steps. However, when Izuku passed by, their eyes widened as they noticed the bruise mark. Izuku saw them pull their phone and start typing fast. They are so alerting his parents, Izuku thought. Soon, Izuku got into the car and the drive back was silent. The guards were tense and Izuku knew why. They wanted to ask about the mark but didn't want to make Izuku uncomfortable since they knew his parents would ask a large number of questions. I'm so glad the therapy sessions have been successful over the past few months. They have made not going into a panic attack so much easier, Izuku thought. After a while, they arrived at the palace and soon walked in. Izuku went to his room and got changed out of his uniform and just headed to one of the private family rooms that he knew his parents would be waiting. Izuku opened the doors and found his mother and father sitting in the seat across from the door just staring at it. The moment he opened it, they waved him over to sit between them. Who, where, when, and why? His father asked with a blood-crazed look. Izuku knew it wasn't directed towards him, but damn, it was scary. Far scarier than his former teacher's eraserhead glare. God, his glare might give all for one a run for his money in the amount of fear they can cause, Izuku thought. Izuku then started to talk about his day went and who had attacked him. His parents were pissed to learn that an old noble house child was acting like that. They then learned that it wasn't a night house, which made them happier since the old night houses never acted like that and only 10% of the old noble houses weren't knighted. They never did like the other old noble houses staying around but had no reason to remove them. They could just outright remove the other 10%, but that would cause some backlash if they did this since the houses haven't done anything to receive the judgment. It would be seen as an oppressive move when the royal family has always ruled through kindness and care and was only cruel and oppressive against threats to the empire. However, now there is a reason to strip that house of their old noble status for at least this house. They would also look into the father and see if he has done anything to be removed from his minster-level position, but the household itself would lose their old noble position since the child of the house was a single child, and they wouldn't anyone else to inherit the title to avoid the removal of their status. They also couldn't adopt anyone to inherit the title since it had to be a blood child to keep the status. The emperor and empress called some senior royal guards and told them to start an investigation into the matters and explained the situation. The guards were pissed to hear what happened to the prince. How dare that mongrel touch the prince, they thought. Soon they left and got to work. As that came to an end, Izuku's mother decided to bring up the other matter that Izuku mentioned. So, you said you got saved by a boy. Was he cute? She asked, and Izuku blushed. Izuku just tried to deny it. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not gay, Izuku said, completely forgetting about the royal blood factor. His mother just shook her head and his father chuckled. Sweetie, it doesn't matter if you're gay or not. All that matters is that you find someone you like, and based on the blush you just had, you did think the boy was cute, Mary stated. Izuku just brought up the fact that he had to make an heir for the throne and that would require a female. His parents raised an eyebrow at that. Son, did you forget about the royal blood special feature for males born into the royal family? Francis asked. Izuku was confused and asked what he meant, but was told to look into the royal knowledge that the seal provides on information about the royal blood and males born into the family. After about 5 minutes, Izuku's eyes widened. I remember seeing this before after the seal was undone. How did I forget about this? Izuku thought. He smacked his head and his mother just laughed at him, which caused him to pout. His father just shook his head and sighed at his wife's antics. Izuku's mother just teased Izuku about having a possible crush. But Izuku just ran away and went to start his royal duties. Izuku soon found himself in his office. Izuku sat down and one royal guard stood inside the room while the rest went to do their other responsibilities to help Izuku with his position. They soon started to bring in files and paperwork that he needed to review and approve or reject. Most of this would go before his parents' eyes to be reviewed and either agreed with or overruled, so Izuku could start getting an idea of how to operate, and when they reject something they would provide him their reasons and allow him to make a counter-argument on why he thinks differently from their views. If Izuku could convince them why something should go one way or another, then they would go with it. After the first 2 months, Izuku would get a lot of rejections back with their reasons, and a lot were based on policy views of how the empire currently works versus how his decision would change that. Others were more rejected and were given a debate us on our objection reason, which Izuku took head-on and proved his point. As time was moving forward, he got better and better and only got 1 or 2 objections on some of his work or none at all some weeks. Izuku was also in charge of reviewing budgets, government agency decisions, government agencies' reports, and other matters. Izuku was getting better at looking over everything, and his parents were happy with his progress. Izuku also even proposed an idea that got adopted by the Empire Council and the royal family. The idea was to set up a petition system for the individual districts. This petition system would allow the citizens of districts to propose suggestions for their district council members to review and propose in front of the entire council. If the normal citizens wanted to suggest a proposal or something before, they had to just write an email or mail a letter to their district council members, which has less of an effect. This new system would let anyone with valid identification from the government registered to propose an idea or suggestion on the system for their individual districts and allow other members of their district to give their support or disapproval of it in a voting system. Any idea that had a 60% approval rate of the entire district's population would be brought to their district council members to review and to have them bring it forth on the council for a debate. The public approval of this idea was complete approval, with no one really disapproving of it since it allowed their voices to be heard more often. They were also shocked to hear that it was brought for and proposed by the prince. This news made people thrilled to learn that he was already working on improving their daily lives. The system was set to launch in a few months since they wanted to make sure it was secured and reliable. It also had to be integrated into the government system since the proposal system required government identification to sign up and vote on it. This was how Izuku made his first impactful change in the empire during his royal duties, and he was proud of how well welcomed it was by the people of his empire. His parents also told him how proud they were of his idea and told him to keep up the good work, though Izuku's mother just kept teasing him about a possible crush on the side conversation. Third POV. The first semester of Izuku's second year had come to an end, and now it was time for the winter break. Izuku, though, didn't want to spend it just staying in the royal palace. Instead, he decided he wanted to explore the capital city and see the sights and meet the people in person before his identity got out to the public. He wanted true answers to what people thought of the royal family and how they thought the empire could be improved or what could be changed for the better. As such, Izuku put on his normal clothing and took some small notepads and a small video recorder and decided to explore the city. The fire team of royal guards got themselves prepared as well and had gear that they could hide behind their street clothing since they couldn't go out in royal guard uniforms. After about an hour of preparation, Izuku and his guards were ready. They took one of the cars that were unmarked and drove into the cities. After about 15 minutes of driving, they pulled around an empty area and parked. They were near a large park near a portion of the city that had a lot of businesses in it, and people mainly walked around this area or took public transportation. The royal guards kept a large distance from Izuku but kept him within their sights and within a distance of a quick run. As such, Izuku was allowed to move around by himself for the most part. Izuku observed how people were operating and how law enforcement was interacting with people. They stopped and talked with people and engaged in normal conversations, and no one seemed afraid to interact with them or fearful of being discriminated against as Izuku watched people with all different types of quirks interact with each other or the police. Izuku was happy with what he was seeing. He decided to go up to some people and talk to them. Some were confused about why he was asking these questions but answered. So far, Izuku never received anything really negative about the royal family or the empire. Some complained that some fines were too high for some laws that they broke in the past, but overall they didn't have large dissatisfaction against the current direction of the empire. This continued on for roughly an hour before he heard a voice call out to him. "Izuku, didn't think I would see you here," stated the voice. Izuku saw that it was Leon that called out for him. Izuku blushed when he saw Leon since they have gotten really close over the recent few months, and he was sure that Leon has been flirting with him over the past months as well and was starting to get his hopes up since Izuku did have a crush on him. Leon and Izuku have been hanging out with Lance and the other Empire guards at lunch during school. Lance has made some jokes that Izuku and Leon would make a good match, but Izuku always hit him in the side since he would blush really hard due to the jokes. "Hello, Leon. What are you doing here?" Izuku asked. Leon explained that he runs through this park a lot of the time and was just on his normal run. Leon had asked Izuku why he was here though, and Izuku explained what he was doing. "Since I'm newer to the Empire, I wanted to get the perspective of how people see the Empire and what they see wrong with it. I'm doing some research for a side project for personal use. So far I haven't seen anything wrong or heard anyone say anything bad," Izuku stated. Leon nodded his head but had a slight frown on his face. Izuku asked him what was wrong, and he said that Izuku wouldn't see the dark sides of the Empire if he was in the good parts of the city. This made Izuku confused and asked him to explain. "Well, it's actually not really known, but there are some darker parts of the city. There is always crime regardless, but there is a little section of the city where some homeless kids will gather," Leon stated. Izuku asked why they weren't in an orphanage, and Leon explained that they somehow got kicked out of the place by those that were running it, but somehow it wasn't being discovered that these kids were missing and he was trying to look into it. Izuku asked if he could take him to the place so Izuku could see and they could take some bread from a local store so they could have some more food. Leon agreed, and after a bit, they stopped in a store and were moving on. Leon was soon put on guard since he noticed people were following them. Izuku had forgotten about the guards since Leon didn't know about them. Within a few seconds, Leon gave all the bread to Izuku and then picked him up bridal style and ran off in an attempt to lose the people following them. "We have some people following us, and I don't know why, so hold on," he said as they were running. "Welp, I'm getting yelled at tonight when I get home by my mom and dad," Izuku thought, but had a smile on his face since it was funny how his guards just lost him due to Leon picking him up out of nowhere and running. Izuku saw the face of a few of the royal guards and they were shocked. After about 5 minutes of running through different areas and places, they had given the royal guards the slip. However, Leon didn't need to know that. "It was quite cute and adorable of him to want to protect me from people following me," Izuku thought. He then got sat down to Izuku's disappointment, but they were about 3 minutes away from the area that the kids meet up according to Leon. After walking for a bit longer, they soon arrived in a rundown area behind some buildings. Izuku was a bit shocked at the state of the area. Leon told him there are a few areas like this, but overall the city doesn't have many spots like this. They walked a bit more and soon they saw the children that were hiding. It was a large range of ages, and Izuku was saddened that these children were living on the street and wanted to find out why they weren't in an orphanage since the Empire had the funds for it. They had just recently increased the budget for orphanages services since he had just read the last quarter budget where the increase happened. Leon got the children to come out and trust Izuku. You can trust him, he is a nice person and won't harm you all. He is new to the Empire and is learning more about it. He is also a very personal and good friend of mine that I care deeply for, Leon stated, and Izuku's heart started to beat fast at that statement that Leon cared for him. Izuku sat down and started to hand out the bread to everyone. His phone ranged and he saw it was from the royal guards and they said they were tracking his location and would be there soon. He quickly texted back and told them he was safe and he wanted them to keep a distance since he had discovered something that would need to be investigated, but the people would likely close up if they saw the random people. They accepted this and wanted him to alert them when he left, and they would follow further behind to not alert Leon. Izuku spent time talking to the children. The stuff he was learning was not good. He learned that the orphanages that they belonged to were all owned by the same string of owners. What was more worrisome was that these owners were all old noble blood houses, but luckily for Izuku on sanity, none of them were knighted houses. These old noble houses were more of the ones that were very rich and influential long ago and had gotten the old noble status granted to them. Izuku was really finding out why his parents did not care for the 10% of old nobles that weren't from knighted houses. Izuku was disgusted with these old noble houses. Izuku looked at the children and promised them that they would find the answers and one day get them back into a safe home as soon as possible. Leon looked at Izuku and wondered how he could promise that so easily. Izuku found out that of the 300 old nobles' houses that currently still remain, 30 of them belonged to non-knighted houses. One was already on his parents' line of sight due to their child, but now Izuku would be putting at least half of the non-knighted old noble houses in the royal family line of fire, and it was going to get ugly. After giving them the rest of the food, Izuku asked Leon if he knew of any more places like this, and Leon said that he currently doesn't, but that doesn't mean there aren't places like this in other cities, which Izuku nodded his head to. Leon could see how disturbed Izuku was and just brought him in for a hug. It's going to be okay. Sooner or later we will find something and figure out why they aren't in homes. My family has been looking into it, but we haven't had much luck since we don't want to tip anyone off. We can't really start an official investigation since it would tip them off as well. So it's been slow and hard, Leon stated. Izuku just thanked him for the hug and Leon just kept hugging Izuku and not letting go, which made Izuku blush harder. After a few minutes, he let go and they kept walking off to the main street. Izuku knew he would start looking into the non-knighted houses when he got back to the palace. Leon asked Izuku if he could take him around the town, and Izuku agreed since he wanted to see more real places and not the glamorous hotspots. As such, they started a long day of looking around the city. Leon took Izuku to different places and different sites, but he also took him to some shopping district. One shopping district was a bit unique. It had a large roof constructed above it to keep the people dry, but it was more or less an open-air shopping district where you walked around to the different shops that were on this street section or on side street. It had a lot of smaller brand shops or locally owned shops. That was the main focus of this shopping area for local business owners to sell their things. Leon explained that there was a growing number of places like this appearing in the Empire since people liked to buy from locally owned stores instead of large brand names from another portion of the Empire or foreign brands. They got some ice cream in one store and sat down to rest. Izuku had noticed his royal guards in the far distance since they tracked his phone. Leon then talked about the children. Izuku, don't get involved with the children's issue. It involves old noble houses that have the power to make your life trouble. Let me and my family deal with it since we have the power to combat them, and we are getting some other knighted houses involved that will help look into the matters. I don't want to lose you, Leon said with a sad smile. Izuku blushed a bit and Leon noticed. I can't promise that. I can't stand by when I see injustice like that and do nothing, but I will be careful, and if I go anywhere I'll give you a call so you can come to be my knight in shining armor, Izuku said with a blush at his ending line. Leon just took it straight up and kneeled to Izuku and took his hand. Thou shalt give me the honor of being your knight would please me greatly. Would you like to be the prince that I come to rescue? Leon said as he kissed Izuku's hand that he took. This caused them both to blush and Izuku just stuttered out a yes. I'd always love for you to come to save me, though I'm afraid you would get tired of saving me all the time, Izuku said. Leon just chuckled darkly. If I get tired, then I guess you would need to re-energize me in some fashion, Leon said in a sweet tone into Izuku's ear. God damn, he is really flirting with me. Wish he would ask me out, Izuku thought. It would be my pleasure, my brave knight. Izuku said with some confidence and a bright smile while sporting a large blush. Leon leaned in and put a kiss on Izuku's cheek and said goodbye since they agreed this would be the last stop today. Izuku just sat there for a while and his royal guards came in with sly smiles. "So, was the thing that you needed to investigate just a flirty night?" asked one of his guards, and that made him snap out quickly. Izuku's blush went away quickly and he tensed up. "Actually no, not out in public. Get the car and we need to return home now. I'll explain when we are in the privacy of the car," Izuku said as he got up. The guards were shocked for a second at the massive mood change and got to work. They sensed this was not just an out-of-nowhere date with his crush, but something really did happen that needs to be looked into. As soon as they all got in the car and drove off, Izuku started to speak. "Leon understood I was looking around the city to get a feel for the Empire and what it was like since I told him I was doing it since I was new to the Empire and wanted to know more. He then told me that I was looking in the wrong places and decided to take me to a hidden area. That is when he noticed you all following us and got us out of there. After we threw you off, we soon came to a desolate place that wasn't all clean and nice. There were homeless children," Izuku said, and the guards were shocked since the Empire invested a lot of money into orphanages to care for the homeless and especially homeless children. They tensed up due to the topic and Izuku explained more. "It seems that my family has been too lenient and kind in our rulership in regards to the old noble houses," Izuku said with anger in his voice as he struck the center console where he was sitting in the back of the car. The guards were shocked at the anger in his voice and what he was saying. How were they too lenient in regards to the old nobles? Is the thought in their mind. All of them actually came from old noble houses, but they were all from knighted houses though. Izuku could see the confusion and fear on their faces since they were from old noble houses, but not the ones he was talking about. "I'm referring to the 10% that isn't from knighted houses. These children are all from homes run by about half of the non-knighted households. There isn't any defensible reason for these children to be on the streets, and I recall no reports of them running away en masse for something like this to happen. We also just recently increased the budget for orphanages as well," Izuku said, still filled with anger in his voice and tone. The royal guards were also angered. It seems that the 10% of old noble houses that were non-knighted houses were getting too comfortable with how things are run in the Empire and need to be shown while the ruling family was in control all of these years. Soon they made it back to the palace and Izuku just went straight for the smaller meeting room since he knew they would be meeting right now with some of the top officials that run the palace on a day-to-day basis. They normally had a monthly meeting with these officials to ensure nothing was going wrong that had to be addressed in the palace. As such, they didn't use any of the larger meeting rooms but just the smaller room that fitted all of the palace's main officials. Izuku did not knock on the door at all. He just opened it and his parents were about to shout until they saw him and his facial expression. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but unless anything is pressing at this time, this meeting will be rescheduled. There is an emergency matter that the ruling family needs to deal with at once," Izuku stated, and the officials were shocked at his tone. They then saw the royal guards of his walk into the room with the same expressions and just got up and they left since they could tell there was no room for debate. Soon the doors closed and his parents asked what was wrong and so important that required their immediate action. Izuku started to explain the situation and what happened today. His parents were interested in how his day went and then their expressions turned cold when they got to the portion about the homeless children. They asked for every single detail that he could describe and explain. Leon did say that he and his family have been looking into it, but it's going slow and hard since they can't start an official investigation without tipping anyone off that might be involved. They are looking to pull in other knighted houses since they are sure none of them are involved since it's the old nobles that belong to the 10% that are non-knighted. We need to do something and get those children off the street, Izuku stated. One royal guard of his brought in the files about the budget and where the money for the orphanages goes towards. As Izuku was talking to his parents, he was reading it and froze. They all asked him what was wrong. "These bastards. We've increased money to the orphanages that are run by these families since they had a higher rate of putting children in homes. I'm doubtful that is true now and those so-called adopted children are in truth being thrown on the streets to die," Izuku said as he slammed his hand on the table. His parents looked over the information he was reading and came to the same conclusion that he did. Soon they calmed down and Izuku explained the rest of the day, including the somehow date he found himself on. "Before you begin, mother, there are more important matters. Also, it wasn't even a date," Izuku said. His mother didn't care and said she supported his pursuit of love, and it was clear that Leon had something for Izuku since he was flirty so much with him. Soon, it was decided that they would call in the Blakewell house for a meeting in the next week or so to give them the ability to look into it formally without announcing a public investigation. It was also decided that Izuku would appear in front of them as the royal prince as well, and they would discuss the matters of Izuku's and Leon's relationship between the families since it was clear that they both had feelings for each other. Izuku's parents did give him the option to ask Leon out on a date before the Blakewell house family members arrived next week. Izuku knew he wanted to start a relationship with Leon since how close they got to each other, and Leon would make Izuku feel safe, and Leon would always listen to Izuku's rant and complain at lunch. As such, everything started to move, and Izuku had to figure out how he was going to ask Leon out while dealing with corrupted officials. Third POV. Izuku was nervous for the next few days. He had set up a meeting with Leon at a cafe in the city, and Leon agreed within seconds of meeting him. The cafe was a nice and quiet one that served some light food and different type of teas. It wasn't high-tech, but it was in an older style and felt warm and like it was a home, which made it a nice find. Leon was actually the one that suggested the location, and Izuku agreed to it. Izuku had the guards drop him off a few blocks, and then he walked to it. They did not get out and follow him, but had 2 cars with them. They kept one a bit behind him and had the other drive further ahead and park so they could keep eyes on him from both sides. They wouldn't be able to follow right behind him since Leon has seen them once already and would get suspicious to see them again. Izuku arrived about 15 minutes early since he wanted to try and calm his nerves, but he walked in and found Leon already there. Izuku was shocked, and so was Leon. "Fancy seeing you here. Come here often," Leon said with a cheesy line. Izuku just burst out laughing. "Well, no. I got suggested this cafe, but this amazing guy, since he said it was nice. Now you wouldn't happen to see where the person I'm meeting is at?" Izuku said with a teasing tone. Leon just smirked. "Oh, I don't. It seems to just be you and me here. He must be a bad date to show you up like that. How about I take his place instead?" Leon said. They both blushed at the implications of his words. "Oh, who said the other guy was my date? I'm single right now, but you also say it like you wish to date me," Izuku asked in a nervous tone, which Leon picked up. He grabbed Izuku's hand and kissed it. "I would have to be blind and an idiot not wanting to date someone as kind as you. I heard rumors of how you were wanting to help some kids. That sounds like an amazing person to me," Leon said in a low tone into Izuku's ear. Izuku just felt a shiver go up to his spine. "Now, if my supposed meetup isn't going to come, then I wouldn't ever oppose joining you," Izuku said. Leon just pulled Izuku into the seat next to him, and the cafe worker came and got their orders, which were some drinks and small food. Izuku started to eat a bit of his food when he decided to confirm if that small dance of words of theirs was Leon asking Izuku to be his boyfriend or not. "I got to know and I got to know before they go to the palace," Izuku thought. He turned his head towards Leon, who was looking at Izuku. "You have such amazing eyes," Leon said. Izuku just blushed but pushed forward. "Stop distracting me from the question I want to ask," Izuku said. Leon just told him to ask away with a raised eyebrow. "All of this, are we, Izuku said, but couldn't ask the question. Leon got the hint though and leaned in and placed a kiss on Izuku's lips and pulled him in for a second before pulling back. "Does that answer your question, my green rabbit?" Leon teased, and Izuku just lightly punched his side and he faked a large wound. My green rabbit is really aggressive lately," he teased. Izuku just pouted. Soon the now confirmed date was going smoothly, and Leon suggested for Izuku to come to meet his parents. They have been wanting to meet Izuku for a while since he has been talking about him to them. Izuku just blushed. "He's been talking to them about me," Izuku thought. "Isn't that a bit soon? Also, you sure they won't have a problem with me not being from a wealthy family?" Izuku asked. He knew based on his parents that Leon's family wasn't like that from what they knew, but Leon just confirmed it. "They won't care. Also, I'm not the heir to the family. I will get some money and all, but I'm not inheriting a lot, so you can't be after me for money. Also, it isn't too soon since I've been talking about you since we've met. They want to see if my description of you meets what I've said." "Sorry about that," Leon said as he rubbed his head. Izuku just rolled his eyes. Izuku agreed to go meet his parents since it would be nice for them to meet him before meeting him in the palace. Soon they arrived at the Blakewell Manor. It was located on the edge of the city in a hilly area. They owned quite a few acres of land, but had most of it as farming land that they hired locals to work and paid a decent wage. Most of the people also lived in homes built on the land as well and did a lot of other work for the Blakewell family. This work included working in the house, some of the businesses they owned, or they worked individually at other places that the family didn't own during the off-farming seasons when the land couldn't be farmed. Leon explained that most of the workers actually owned the land that their homes were on near the farmland. "Our family offered them a pay-to-own agreement that as long as they worked for us and paid us so much money, they could purchase the land ownership from the family, and nearly 90% of the current workers own their homes outright or inherited it from ancestors. Most workers have stayed with the family for generations since we have treated them fairly," Leon stated as they walked towards the front door. Leon just opened the door without knocking and invited Izuku into the house. Soon they arrived, found Leon's parents out in the backyard with Leon's father wearing armor and training. Leon called out to his parents and they turned and saw them. They also noticed Leon was holding Izuku's hand, who was standing slightly behind and to the side of Leon. Izuku noticed where they were looking and tried to pull away and blushed, but Leon acted too fast and just made sure his grip was tighter so Izuku couldn't escape and pulled him forward to be in front of him, where Leon placed his hands on his shoulder and stood behind Izuku. "Mom, Dad, meet Izuku, my boyfriend," Leon stated. Their eyes widened and they moved over to Leon and Izuku and introduced themselves. Leon's father's name was Seth Blakewell and Leon's mother was Grace Blakewell. Leon's brother also came out in a martial arts uniform and introduced himself as Alan Blakewell. They all moved into the house and sat down to talk. "So you are Izuku Midoriya. Our son has talked a lot about you," stated Leon's father. Leon's mother just agreed and sat next to her son and was giving him a teasing smile. Izuku knew how that felt quite well from his own mother. Soon the conversation dug into how they met and what they normally do together. They laughed a bit at how Leon was when he asked and called him out for being so cheesy. "Really, son? That is how you asked him out, by acting as a stranger hitting on him?" Leon's mother said. The teasing went on for a bit longer before it was closing in on dinner. They invited Izuku to stay for dinner, but he responded that he needed to get home soon since his parents would be waiting for him. This piqued Leon's interest since Izuku hasn't talked about his parents yet. Leon has also stated this to his family since he talked a bit about Izuku's past and how he faced a lot of discrimination. Leon has come to learn a great majority of Izuku's past childhood and really wanted to break some skulls. He always wondered about Izuku's parents but never brought it up since Izuku didn't. Leon's parents suggested for Leon to take him home, which Izuku just declined. "That won't be needed. I will be fine going home myself. I don't want to trouble him," Izuku said. Leon's parents wouldn't have it since it was getting late and they were on the edge of the city where public transport didn't come often. Soon Izuku gave in and agreed to be at least taken back into the city to the main public train station so he could use it to get home. Leon felt a bit off on the fact that Izuku didn't want him to see his home. As such, he brought it up when they got outside and away from his parents. "Izuku, you know I love you, right?" he asked in a worried tone, and Izuku tensed and responded yes. "Then why won't you let me see where you live or talk about your parents? I've never brought them up since you didn't mention them in your past, so I've been assuming they weren't in your life." "Are you safe?" Leon asked. Izuku just looked at him and hugged him. "Please trust me. I want to tell you, but you will learn soon. You will meet my parents sooner than you think. I just need you to wait for a bit and you will understand why I don't talk about home much around others. Can you wait a bit, please?" Izuku asked as he looked up to Leon since he was taller and bigger than Izuku. Leon agreed and said he would drop it for now, but if he felt Izuku was in danger, he was kidnapping him and locking him in his family home while he goes and hunts Izuku's so-called parents down if they are hurting him. Izuku just laughed at the image he had in his mind of Leon charging the palace. It wasn't a good one. After a while, Leon and Izuku arrived back in the city and Leon dropped him off at the train station before watching Izuku get on a train and leaving. He then drove home and promised himself he wouldn't push Izuku on the issue for now since he promised he would meet his parents and understand the situation soon. While Leon was thinking this, Izuku was riding the train and texted the royal guard that he would get off at the next station. They confirmed his text and said they would be waiting there for him. After about 10 minutes, he arrived at the station and saw 2 of the knights waiting for him to guide him to the train. Once they got in the car, they all asked how it went since he went to his crush's home. "It's actually him being my boyfriend now and not a crush. Thank you very much," Izuku said, shocking them. They congratulated him and they talked about how the home visit went. They also talked about how Leon wanted to meet his parents and threatened to hunt down Izuku's parents and lock Izuku in his home until he was safe. They just chucked at it since they had a mental image of him trying it and being wiped out before he got to the second gate. They all soon arrived at the palace and Izuku was pulled away by his parents who were waiting near the doors for him since the royal guards notified them that they were returning. His mother just wanted the juicy details of the meetup. "I would think you would get a lot of gossip as the empress. So why are you so interested in my love life?" Izuku complained as his mother dragged him off to the private study. She just looked at him that spelled problems if he didn't stop that line of talking. Izuku just gulped and knew he was going to be explaining every single detail. "Come on, mother. Why must you be like this?" Izuku thought as his mother sat him down and demanded details. His father just followed behind, shaking his head at his wife. Soon after about an hour of questioning and answering, his mother let him breathe a sigh of relief. "Thank you for letting me keep my soul," Izuku muttered, and his mother glared at him, which shut up quickly. Soon the conversation switched quickly from Izuku's private life to how the palace meeting was going to take place. "You remember that you will be entering with us, correct?" Izuku mothers asked. Izuku nodded his head and explained that he knew and was going to dress in his formal wear for the meeting next week. He was also somewhat glad school would start up again. Izuku did ask if the children were picked up yet, and his father explained that they were. The royal guards went and picked them up and acquired all of the children. Copies of the orphanage were pulled as well without alerting anyone, and they would compare the records to the children to see who was truly adopted or not. "Oh, by the way, Leon knows I have parents now, but not who." I never take about my parents with him since. Well, I'm hiding that I'm a prince at the moment. So he assumed I didn't have any since I never mentioned any when talking about my childhood, and he thinks you might be hurting me or I'm in danger. He did make a comment that if he thinks I'm in danger, he is going to lock me in his home and hunt you two down," Izuku said as he laughed, and his parents just fell over in laughter. "Well, he is sure in for a surprise," Izuku's father stated. Soon they went and ate dinner and got ready for the end of the day since next week would be busy since the meeting is on Monday. Soon the time passed and Izuku spent a few more days with Leon and went out on some dates. However, it was now time for the meeting in the palace. Izuku had gotten dressed in his more formal clothing and was ready to go into the throne room when the meeting started. After about 10 minutes, the royal guards knocked on his bedroom door and alerted him that the Blakewell household had arrived at the gates and would be entering the palace at any moment. Izuku then headed down to the room near the throne room and waited with his parents. The Blakewell household would be taken into the throne room first before the royal family was announced. Typically, the royal family would be in the room first. But since no one outside of the palace and a handful of officials knew of Izuku's appearance, it was decided they would enter and be announced. After about another 5 minutes, royal guards entered the side room and told the family that the Blakewell household was in the throne room and was waiting. As such, Izuku's parents went ahead and Izuku followed a few feet behind them. The door on the side of the throne room opened and the royal guards inside announced their arrival. Announcing the arrival of Her Majesty Empress Mary Westwin, yelled a royal guard. As she entered and took her seat, the next announcement happened for Izuku's father. Announcing the arrival of His Majesty Emperor Francis Westwin, yelled the royal guard. He took his seat to the side of Izuku's wife, and the Blakewell family members looked ready to stand up at their order, but noticed they didn't give it and looked up slightly at the ruling family in confusion. Then they heard the next announcement and was shocked. Announcing the arrival of His Highness, Prince Izuku Westwin, yelled the royal guard. They perked up and were shocked to see who walked in. Leon was the most shocked as he forgot where he was and just went straight up to his feet as Izuku walked straight ahead and took his seat on his throne next to his mother. Leon's father pulled him down back on his knee quickly, but Leon was still looking straight at Izuku in shock. "Members of the Blakewell household may rise," stated Empress Mary. She just ignored the fact that Leon had already risen once and wasn't really bowing anymore. It was honestly amusing to see their shocked face. The Blakewell family was still in shock as they all stood up. Then the ruling family started to speak. "We have summoned you here on multiple matters. As you might notice, we have our son here today. You might recognize him as Izuku Midoriya, which was his previous last name before he was located and found. We had intended to keep his appearance hidden longer from others until his first public appearance, but some matters have happened that require this meeting," stated Empress Mary. The Blakewells nodded their head. They could guess several matters, one the children and the second being the fact the two children are dating. Leon then realized why Izuku didn't talk about his family. "First, we will address the first more important matter. It has been brought to our attention that there were children on the streets homeless. Your second-born child showed this to our son without knowing he was a royal. Doing this brought it to our attention and allowed us to act on the new information. We've also come to learn you have been investigating it but are having trouble because you can't do it officially without tipping off people. As such, by royal order, you are hereby ordered to begin an investigation using the royal guards as your supporting members who can access any information you need. We've also already pulled a lot of information and taken the children off the street and provided them temporary housing to ensure they are not found by others until this case is settled," stated Empress Mary. The Blakewell just acknowledged the order and thanked the ruling family for entrusting it to them. They talked a bit more about the order and what they expected to be done. The royal family wanted anyone involved brought forward to be prosecuted by the royal family since this has become a royal case instead of a typical judicial government case. After finishing that topic up, they then moved on to the next topic. Izuku's father took the lead here. Leon Blakewell stepped forward. He declared in a cold tone, "Oh God, they are going to scare him on purpose," Izuku thought. Leon went tense and stepped forward while having his arm in the salute to the royals. "Yes, Your Majesty," Leon asked. Izuku's father was going to have fun from what Izuku could see. "Do you understand what crimes you have committed against the royal family and the punishment for those crimes?" Emperor Francis stated. Izuku was really struggling from just throwing something at his father. Leon was terrified now and Izuku was close to taking pity on him, but his parents would complain later that Izuku didn't let them give Leon a strong talking to about not harming their son. "No, Your Majesty, I did not know kissing your son was considered a crime," Leon stated as he bowed his head. Izuku just blushed hard since he didn't tell his parents that. Both of his parents turned his head at that and looked at Izuku. "Oh, son, you didn't mention that part," Empress Mary stated. "Ugh, mother, father, please stop tormenting my boyfriend. You are going to make him run away. I would like someone that cared for me as an individual and not my title, which will be near impossible to find after my public appearance, so please don't scare him off," I really like him. Izuku groaned out and then realized what he just said and hid his face in his hands. His parents just smirked and laughed a bit. Fine, we'll stop messing with him, Empress Mary stated. The Blakewells were confused. Leon Blakewell, remember this now. Harm our son or betray him and you better flee this country and hide at the ends of the earth and pray we never find you. Do you understand? Emperor Francis stated with a glare. Leon just nodded his head and they announced the end of the meeting. Izuku's parents called for the Blakewell family to follow them and to leave Leon and Izuku to talk. The royal guards exited the room as well. Izuku was nervous. He didn't know how Leon would react to finding out that he had agreed to date the royal prince and the responsibilities that included in the future if they got married. However, Izuku was knocked out of his thoughts when Leon came over and lifted Izuku's head and planted a deep kiss on his lips. Izuku pulled back and blushed hard. I should call you Sneaky Green Rabbit from now on, I guess, Leon stated. Izuku just apologized for the lies. Sorry about the lying about who I am. The only true lie that I know of that I said was about my last name. Everything else about my past is true and so is my love for you. You do realize if you keep a relationship with me you will be in the public eye soon and would undertake a large number of responsibilities as the future supporting ruler when we get married, since I'm betting our parents are signing paperwork to have us engaged right now, Izuku said. Leon knew that it was a high possibility of them signing paperwork to engage Izuku and him together, since it was more traditional for any relationship between a royal to have that done whenever a relationship started. Leon, though, didn't have a problem with it. Sneaky little green rabbit. Was this your plan to tie me down this entire time? Get me in a relationship and then into a contract to have your way with me? Leon teased into Izuku's ear, which made him a blushing mess and had him denying it. Don't worry, I'm just teasing you, Sneaky Green Rabbit. I won't ever leave you, my prince. I did agree to be your shining knight after all, Leon said as he kneeled in front of Izuku and kissed his hand as a traditional knight would do to a princess. Soon the families came back, and as Leon and Izuku predicted, they had signed engagement paperwork. It only requires you 2 signatures and it will be official. It's been the tradition that anyone in a relationship with a royal member would be officially engaged and have it declared to keep away other people from trying to interfere in either lover's life, or else they get punished by the royal family, stated Empress Mary as she remembered how Francis was engaged to her right away. The contract can be broken if both parties agree to it, but otherwise it's set in stone for the rest of the world to know about once it's announced. They both signed right away as Leon quickly grabbed the pen and signed his name, which made Izuku happy that he didn't hesitate at all. The families had lunch together before the Blakewell family was dismissed to start working on the case. Third POV. It was time for the next semester to start, and it would be the last semester of Izuku's second year. This also meant that Leon would graduate this semester and enter the Empire Guards. It was decided, though, that he would split a portion of his time working in the royal palace to get him adjusted to the daily life of the palace and the work he would be undertaking in the future, due to the fact that when Izuku becomes 18, the end of his final high school year, they would get married and Leon would transition into the royal palace full-time. This means that Leon would start undertaking all of his duties as a prince, since he would be married into the royal family and be called Prince Leon Westwin at that point in time, and he would become the supporting ruler with Izuku as the main ruler, and they both would be called emperor in the future. Leon easily agreed to this and was thanking the fact that his family had taught him a lot of basic administrative work as a part of his education when growing up, so it would be easier to adjust to the transition. He was a bit sad that he wouldn't be an Empire Guard for a long time, but planned to keep training to ensure he could protect himself and Izuku if he ever needed to in the future. Also, since his quirk relies on how strong and skilled he is as an individual, Izuku apologized for more or less ripping him away from his desire to be an Empire's Guard, and Leon just told Izuku it didn't matter much. I was going into that to save and help people. As the future ruler with you in the future, I can make a large impact, far greater than I could as an Empire's Guard. As such, you don't need to feel like you ripped something away from me, stated Leon as he placed a kiss on Izuku's cheek. They were also informed of when Izuku's first public appearance would be. It was decided that it would be held during the summer break. This way Izuku could focus solely on the event and not school. Leon's engagement to Izuku would also be announced at the event as well, so no one would try setting him up with anyone. In other news, the case regarding the orphanage and old nobles is moving forward. They were able to track down those that were really adopted and confirmed those that weren't. They had royal guards search any city that the kids were in if they weren't confirmed to have been actually adopted as claimed. They did end up finding most of the kids, but sadly some did die on the streets. This meant those individuals who were involved were now responsible for murder charges. This news made the case all that more important. So far they have gathered a lot of evidence against around half of the nun-knighted old nobles. They were wanting to get some more before they arrested everyone, but at this point, They had enough to arrest them all for a list of crimes. Such crimes currently are murder, misuse of public funds, embezzlement, corruption of public office, child neglect, child endangerment. All of these crimes could lead them all to life imprisonment and revoking of their old noble status. The family not involved would keep any assets that were left after recovering the stolen funds, since they know how much was stolen by each old noble house. The family knew there would be public outrage, and they were glad they had found it first. This allows them to control the flow of information and maintain law and order. After a few more weeks passed, the royal guards made their move. A handful of the criminals were a part of the government agencies in charge of monitoring the orphanage. This was how they hid their crimes for the past 2 years since they started. Others owned businesses and their offices were stormed. All of these arrests caught public attention and questions were being asked. The royal family put out a statement that shocked everyone. The statement read the following: as of roughly 1 month ago, His Highness the Prince was alerted to the fact that children were living on the streets. This prompted him to take action and bring it to the attention of the Empress and Emperor, who brought the old noble house Blakewell to the royal palace. The Blakewell family was investigating unofficially already, since they were the ones that alerted the prince, who escalated the issue and provided the royal guards involvement to speed the investigation up and find all criminals involved. It became clear that a large number of the nun-knighted old nobles were involved in running a criminal enterprise in their orphanages by falsely their records, by claiming children were adopted when they were in truth thrown into the streets. A list of charges will be submitted, which does include the charge of multiple murders due to some children's deaths in the street, stated the statement from the palace. People were disgusted by the crimes but pleased by how the royal family acted in handling the situation. They were also happy that the prince was taking charge of the situation that he was involved in. The public did call for the investigation of all old noble households, and all the knighted old nobles publicly supported the call and proactively sent all financial documents to the investigation commission that was set up for the incident. The public was thrilled with their response, but noticed that the nun-knighted houses declined to voluntarily comply. This resulted in a royal order for the royal guards to investigate the rest of the nun-knighted households, and some crimes were found. Most were really minor, but was enough to strip them of their old noble status, since the public would easily support it currently. This resulted in all nun-knighted households being stripped of their status. The royal family was privately happy and thrilled, since none of them cared for those houses. The public didn't react negatively to these old nobles losing their status. The knighted households were publicly praised by the royal family for proactively sharing their information and coming back perfectly clean, which the public was happy and thrilled with. Soon the trials for those involved started, and the emperor presided over trials as the judge. Normally it would be just a judge from the judicial branch of the government, but since this became a royal family case, the emperor was going to preside over it with a normal judge running it mostly. What the royal family was after was punishment, and they would not let the old nobles off easily. After about 1 week of trials, it all came to an end. The defendants have been found guilty of all crimes. This court will now render the sentence, stated the judge, but before he could start, the emperor spoke up. Actually, the royal family will be declaring punishments, stated Emperor Francis. Everyone was shocked, since the royal family didn't get involved any time during the trials until now. The defendants' lawyers objected, but Emperor Francis glared and spoke. "You are a fool thinking you can object. Indeed, the royal family hasn't gotten involved in a case for a long time, but this case is not a normal one, and it also involves old nobles. You also forget this is an empire ruled by a royal family. We are known for our kindness and care, but we are also known for our ruthlessness to those that harm the empire," stated Emperor Francis. The lawyers shut up quickly. Due to the crimes committed and the expectations set for old nobles, the empire hereby declares the guilty parties will be sentenced to maximum time under the law. Also, all assets are to be liquidated to recover any stolen funds of the empire. Anything left will be returned to any family not involved in the crimes, but if the entire family was involved, then all assets are seized by the empire. Also, all households involved are hereby stripped of their old noble status as of this moment, stated Emperor Francis. The crowd was shocked at the sentencing, but then they remembered that the emperor was right. The royal family is known for kindness and caring during their ruling, but also are known for their cruelty and ruthlessness to those that harm or threaten the empire. They had forgotten that fact, since no one had invoked the royal family's wrath any time lately. Soon, the public calmed down in regards to the events, and everything went back to normal. The public was supportive of the knighted household still, and no backlash had hit the royal family or them, since it was a knighted household and the royal family that dealt with the criminals. After a few weeks, the orphanages that were under the control of the criminals were put under the management of the government, and the children were all returned to the orphanages. The kids were amazed and surprised to find out that the kind green-haired male that provided them food and promised them that he would save them was in truth the prince. Some of the older kids declared that they would join the Empire Guards or Royal Knights in the future and serve His Highness. Most of the younger kids just didn't care and were curious and amazed at meeting a real-life prince like from the fairy tales. Overall, the situation came to an end with a good resolution, but Izuku was still saddened that they couldn't save them all. Leon figured this out one night and just talked to Izuku so he wouldn't get lost in his thoughts. Love, we can't save everyone. Just remember, if you weren't the prince and acted as you did, then a lot more of the kids would not be here since the royal family was able to get them all saved and the criminals dealt with. You are a hero, my love, never forget that, Leon said as he kissed Izuku's hand. While all of this was going on, events in Japan weren't so calm and peaceful. Instead, they were chaotic and violent. The Paranormal Liberation Front had regrouped after some time and was ready for the war for Japan. The heroes had gotten slightly advanced notice of the incoming war from their spyhawks who the Hero Commission had planted in as a double agent, but the warning wasn't long enough as Japan fell into a state of civil war. Though the government would claim it wasn't a civil war but instead a large-scale villain attack. However, the problem with that is the fact that some of the public was supporting the so-called villains. Shigaraki was smart and had matured greatly since the initial days of his rising to public attention. Before they publicly announced their war, he gathered the members from the League and members of the Metal Liberation Army and put together a manifesto or overall policy guide on what they were aiming to change at the end of everything. This included a change in quirk laws and the abolishment of the hero system. They wanted to put law enforcement back in the hands of the law and not in the hands of entertainers, which the heroes have become. They wanted stronger discrimination laws put in place and protections for quirkless people. A lot of these goals had sparked public support in Japan since there were those that agreed with it. It was the people that were forgotten by society, discriminated against by the society under the current laws and social views. There were battles that were bloody, but the Paranormal Liberation Front had kept most battles outside of cities and attempted to never start the fights in the first place. This put them in even a better light overall in the public eyes, since the public was seeing that the heroes were the ones to start the fights when members of the Paranormal Liberation Front were just walking down the street. The government felt pressure. The Hero Commission felt the pressure. The people in charge of the Hero Commission didn't want to lose their control, to lose their power. However, after months of the Paranormal Liberation Front declaring their war and many bloody battles that the heroes started first, the Paranormal Liberation Front had gained control of a portion of Japan. This portion that they gained took them several months, and they were coming closer and closer to the summer months, but they had gained control of some of the land and were holding on strong. They started to implement their policy changes in the area they controlled, like increasing discrimination laws and relaxing the quirk use laws, but also putting in place a large number of laws that penalized people if they used them to harm others. It was a rocky start on the roughly half a year that they launched their war, and they knew they would need to be careful on their advances from now on and make sure they didn't lose control of what they already had. They also needed to ensure the citizens under their leadership were happy, since it didn't matter if they wanted to help or not. It mattered if they would cause problems and revolt behind their lines while they were pushing forward in the rest of Japan. Shigaraki was glad that the doctor had provided him a copy of All for One, though he did discover that there was a hidden echo of his master inside. I'm assuming master didn't account for what I was going to do, since I outright decayed his echo from the copy of the quirk the moment I found it inside my mindscape. Though Shigaraki, the surprise that All for One had was hilarious to Shigaraki, since he was no longer following the set path that his master had set forth. He did not want to rule through fear and destroy everything. He wanted to destroy to rebuild from anew, and the hero society needed to be removed for that to happen. While all the outside world was in chaos, Shigaraki found himself currently sitting at a desk doing a lot of paperwork. No one ever told me leadership would involve so much paperwork, Shigaraki grumbled. He then heard the doctor laugh from behind him. What? Don't like the paperwork? Don't complain. Even All for One couldn't escape it from his underground empire before it got destroyed by the heroes, stated the doctor. Shigaraki just turned around to the doctor and asked what he needed. The doctor just said he was out and about and getting his body moving, since he was in his lab for so long and needed to move around. I'll be returning to my lab in a few minutes. Just need the blood moving in my body, stated the doctor. Shigaraki was surprised to learn how old the doctor was due to an anti-aging quirk that he had made a copy of for All for One. The age-old question of how All for One was still alive was answered via the doctor. Shigaraki got up and left the office, since he had a large meeting with all of the generals and public officials of their controlled land area to go to. They invited the publicly elected leaders from the cities to these meetings to show that they wanted to rule fairly and peacefully and didn't want to rule through fear and cruelty. Shigaraki arrived in the meeting room to find it filled already, and he was the only one missing. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for waiting. Let's get started, Shigaraki stated as he sat down and looked over everyone. They went to most of the normal stuff of how their supplies are doing and how the war front is. Then as they progressed, one of the information gathering agents brought troubling news. As you all know, Japan is trying to do anything and everything they can to stop us from gaining more land in this war. However, due to their structure, they can't pull all of the heroes from across Japan to deal with us without risking large-scale villain attacks in those areas. Nor can they do this easily with the police. They are already throwing everything they can currently on the front lines and sending anyone that they can from hero schools if they have provisional licenses. As you all know, Tua and the recently graduated Lemillion with his somehow new strength quirk have been the biggest fighters on the front lines, stated the general in charge of spying and information gathering. Everyone nodded their heads. Those students have been tempered by battles already and were stronger than most normal heroes and were annoying to deal with on the front lines. As such, Japan has been looking at ways to counter us and gain strength. It has come to our attention that they plan to send a delegation of heroes and government officials to the Great Westwin Empire to better their relationship and ask for aid in this war to put down the villain uprising. This is troubling since the Empire is known for providing aid to other countries if their request is granted, but a case must be made and presented in front of the royal family or the Empire Council. The Japanese government is sending Tua, Lemillion, All Might, Eraserhead, Nezu, and some other heroes and government officials to the Empire to attend the prince's first public appearance in the royal palace, where other nations' ambassadors will be in attendance. Their goal is to get the prince to agree to it, since he does have similar authority to his parents in the authorization of military aid or other government aid. They hope the heroes around his age can convince him and get close to the prince and establish better ties for Japan's future, stated the general of information gathering. Everyone was tensed at this knowledge. It was common knowledge that the Empire would help with very powerful villains, criminals in other nations, or terrorists throughout the world that use quirks to cause problems. They tended not to get involved in internal matters that were civil wars, but if the Japanese government could picture the Paranormal Liberation Front as just a strong villain uprising and not a civil war as they are now claiming to be, then the Empire might get involved. So, that's it. We're done for, since the Empire will likely get involved. Even with Shigaraki having All for One, we can't stand against them. Not even All for One himself could stand against them and their military power. Their royal guards are also known for being able to take our strong villains without using quirks as well, stated Dabai and a few other members of the council. A lot of the others agreed with this viewpoint and knew their fate was sealed. Shigaraki himself knew that if the Empire got involved against them, then they wouldn't win and they would be slaughtered. Then a voice spoke out against the other voices. "Calm down. It isn't over yet," Jiren stated, which shocked everyone. They were confused about how it wasn't over. "What do you mean, Jiren? Even I must admit we can't go against the Empire." Shigaraki asked the question on everyone's mind. Jiren looked at his hands and thought for a moment. "Shigaraki, how good are you at diplomacy?" Jiren stated with a smile. Everyone was confused. "Haven't done it much, but I think I'm doing so far, leading everyone here and dealing with issues from the public leaders," Shigaraki said as he moved his hands to point to the public leaders, who did nod their heads. They had to admit that they didn't think he would be a good leader, but he was doing a very decent job currently. And the overall public was happy and crime was currently lower than ever before. Then get cleaned up, get better clothing, and get a delegation team put together. You're going to the Empire on a peaceful mission. I'm doubtful you could get them to support us, but the main goal is to convince them not to get involved in Japan's internal affairs and that we aren't a villain uprising but a group fighting a civil war, stated Jiren. Everyone was confused on how he thought they were going to get invited to the Empire. "Now, how do you propose we get invited to the Empire, get into the palace, and not get ended?" Twice asked. Jiren just smiled. "Well, as it so happens to be, the royal family owes me 1 Ayu since I helped the prince out when he was still missing and lived on the run in Japan for some time. You know him, Shigaraki, and you will need to apologize to him when you get there or the Emperor and Empress might end you," Jiren said, and everyone was confused about how Shigaraki knew the damn prince. "The prince goes by the name of Izuku," stated Jiren, and the entire league opened their eyes widely. "You're telling me the Broccoli kid was the prince?" Dabai shouted as he fell back out of his chair in shock. Jiren just confirmed it. "So Shigaraki, you got 2 choices. 1, risk Japan getting them to support them. Or 2, go to the Empire and risk getting ended sooner rather than later, but you also get the chance of convincing the Empire to stay out of Japan's internal affairs. You also need to apologize for framing Izuku as well in UA, but he doesn't actually hate you for that since they betrayed him on so little evidence," Jiren stated, and Shigaraki just had a large smirk. Soon it was decided that the Paranormal Liberation Front would send a delegation to the Empire if Jiren could get the royal family to use the Ayu to recognize them as a political party long enough for the event. and allow them to have an audience with the royal family after the event. Shigaraki knew he would have to apologize a bit, but not everything, since Jiren said that Izuku didn't really blame them for the framing incident since Yue had betrayed him so easily on so little evidence. Didn't think that would work. It was meant to be an annoyance at most for them to deal with the infiltration that was disguised as their student. Seems it might play in our favor since Yue doesn't know he is the prince while we do, Shigaraki thought. Third POV. The second semester of school went by quickly for Izuku. He had learned a lot from the Royal Librarian and was easily able to keep up with the lessons in the class and was starting to do some college-level work, so he would be far more prepared for his future as the ruler. Izuku knew he had a lot to make up for since he had been missing for years, and the entire fate of the empire would be his to protect one day. This made Izuku push himself from quirk training, educational, physical training, learning royal duties, studying royal knowledge from the seal, and anything else he could do. Though it did hit a snag when he made himself collapse from exhaustion and Leon found him one afternoon. Izuku hadn't come to the meetup in the city like he had agreed to, so Leon just went into the royal palace since he was allowed free entry now, and he discovered Izuku asleep at his desk. The royal guards explained what he's been doing lately, and Leon wasn't having any of it. He walked into the office and picked Izuku up and took him out to the royal gardens that were within the walls of the palace. The garden had plants from all over the world, and Izuku would spend some time in the garden every once in a while. He did like spending more time in it when Leon was around, though, since most people just left them alone unless something important happened or they had something scheduled all ready to go do. Izuku was still asleep when they arrived. The little gazebo on the small pond had 2 chairs and a table, but it also had a bench built in it for people to lay down on. Leon sat down and put Izuku's head on his lap and just sat there waiting for Izuku to wake up. After about 5 minutes, Izuku started to arise from his deep sleep. Izuku's eyes opened and he saw Leon above him. "Hey, it's my knight in shining armor. Did you come to save me from paperwork?" Izuku said with a small giggle. Leon rolled his eyes and stared at Izuku, who knew he effed up. "Love, you can't keep pushing yourself like this. You need to take breaks when I'm not around to force you to take breaks. A dead prince isn't a good prince since he can't lead his empire if he is dead. So, you need to relax and set aside at least 2 hours to just relaxing each day," Leon stated, and Izuku knew he couldn't complain or he was going to get in trouble. Izuku just nodded his head and Leon just rubbed his hands through Izuku's hair. "Good sneaky little rabbit. Don't want to have to start punishing you now," Leon said, and Izuku perked up at that and wondered what punishment would be. "I see you are wondering what punishments would be. Don't get too curious now, since you wouldn't like being riled up but denied and refused the ability to climax," Leon said in a deep and rough tone into Izuku's ear, which just caused him to blush hard and eyes widen. Izuku didn't want to go down that route. Not at all. Izuku expected Leon would have a lot of fun punishing him and was starting to believe that Leon had a sadistic side that was waiting to appear if it was given the chance. After about 30 minutes of just resting together, they got up and went back to work. They decided not to go out of the palace currently, but to get to work on some of the paperwork in Izuku's office. Leon had just picked Izuku up and carried him since Izuku was far lighter and smaller compared to Leon. "You know, if I had no idea the amount of training and muscles you have hidden, I would think you were a little stick," Leon teased, and Izuku just pouted. "Yeah, and that's how I get people to lower their guards," Izuku said. Soon they arrived back in the office and got to work. "Did you know we spend a lot of money in incorrect payments to institutions and people that shouldn't be getting payments? For example, based on last year's records, government agencies reported a $100 billion amount of improper payments. Did you also know that we don't really have a group that focuses on looking into cutting this waste? Most are just internal controls or internal watchdogs," Izuku stated, and that number was large even for Leon when you are considering the number of things that waste could be applied to. Izuku had written a proposal to have the internal watchdogs of each agency work with an outside watchdog at least twice a year, with the aim of cutting down on practices that create the waste and looking at how to recover some of the improper payment, since there wasn't any real system currently set up. Most just requested payments back from the business they worked with and got them back, but some had to be searched for, and this proposal would make it easier since there would be a team created for this sole purpose. Leon looked over the proposal and suggested some changes, and they forwarded it to the Emperor and Empress for final approval since it required setting up a supervising team for other government agencies. The day passed and it was time for dinner. The two families would be having dinner together so they could spend more time getting used to each other, since they would be in-laws in the future if the boys got married. The boys thought it was for a different reason. Their mothers enjoyed joining forces to tease them both. "Welcome, sweeties. I heard Leon dragged you out to the garden today when you fell asleep at your desk," Mary stated. Izuku just groaned. "Of course you heard about that. Dang guards can't keep gossip with you," Izuku said as he started to eat. Everyone just chuckled at him. Don't worry, my empress. I did have a discussion with Izuku about overworking himself and the punishments involved if he keeps doing it, Leon stated. Izuku just choked on his food at the fact that Leon was mentioning that here, and he did with a tone that everyone knew what he implied. Izuku just glared at him, though it had no effect since he just had a smirk on his face. Soon the dinner came to an end, and their parents reminded them that the royal event would be coming up in about a month and a half. Once the event happens, you won't be able to leave the palace as easily without a lot more guards or being surrounded in public. So I suggest you to relax and enjoy the next month and a half as much as you can with a lot of dates or relaxation. The paperwork will all be here when you return, Empress Mary stated. Leon thanked her and started to make a large number of plans without Izuku knowing. Izuku understood this quite well. Once his image is out in the public, then it would be really hard to move around in the public without being coming up to him. The next week, Leon asked Izuku to go out on a string of dates. The first one was at a festival in another city within the 6th district. This festival was celebrating the harvest of the previous farming season and was thanking the gods for the harvest. They were also praying to the gods to support the next year's harvest as well. Music, dancing, food stalls, a bonfire, and other things are done in the city and its surrounding. A lot of the farming cities hold festivals like this near the first month of the summer, and the city Leon was taking Izuku was one of the better ones that Leon liked. As such, with Izuku's royal guards coming along, they went to the 6th district, which didn't take long since they traveled via royal plane and landed at a military airport and used an unmarked car provided by the military to get around. No one was allowed around the plane to ensure Izuku's face wasn't seen by anyone on the base. Once they landed and were in the car, it was a 10-minute drive to the city of Wildford that was located near a large lake. Leon didn't tell Izuku what they were going to do, but Izuku was shocked when they arrived. It's a summer festival celebrating the previous harvest and praying for the next to be good as well. The festival goes on all day and into the night with different things. Since the Empire has had a lot of different influences from other cultures during its history, you can see some things that would remind you of a lot of different nations. This festival is also nicknamed the Cultural Festival due to the aspects of so many cultural, Leon stated. Izuku was amazed at the colorful outfits and all of the children and people moving around. They walked around and grabbed food from some stalls while they enjoyed the sights. They took some photos together and enjoyed drinks made by locals. Soon the night was closing, and since they arrived only an hour before nighttime, Leon said that is when things change from a lot of movement to more calmness and special events. Izuku could see what Leon meant as the crowds were moving out of the city and towards the edge of the city where they had many more stalls set up and attractions for the festival going. Izuku recognized the theme of the stalls were more Japanese themed but had the Westwin Empire language on them. They also had a shrine set up that looked freshly built. Leon explained that they built it every year. The old shrine got destroyed about 2 years ago. A fire destroyed it, but they rebuilt it with some government assistance since these festivals are so important to locals across the empire, Leon stated. Izuku and Leon walked up to the shrine and did a small prayer. Izuku wished for his empire to keep flourishing while Leon just made a small prayer as well. Please gods, let me be strong enough always to be his armor and sword whenever he is in danger, Leon said. After a few minutes, they headed into the festival stalls and started to work through them. After about an hour after dark set, the fireworks started. They were amazing and filled with a large number of colors. The fireworks were set off near the lake to ensure nothing got damaged. Izuku just sat down on a sheet that Leon had bought from a stall, and they sat under a tree nearby to watch. The fireworks were going on for roughly several minutes, and Izuku and Leon were just holding hands with the royal guards off to the side. They themselves were also enjoying the show. Though about 5 minutes later, Izuku heard a cry for help and he got up to find it. The guards noticed him moving and came over. Leon followed behind him since he also heard the cry. After about 2 minutes of searching, they found a young child in the bushes who was crying for his parents. "Hello, what's your name, young man?" Izuku said as he leaned down and held out his hand. The young boy slowed down his crying a bit and looked at Izuku and Leon and then noticed the other 4 people. "Nathan, my name is Nathan Wildford," the boy said, and then they all realized this was likely the youngest grandchild of the Wildford household. The household has been a loyal knighted house that owns a lot of land in the surrounding of this city they are in. The Wildford house was overall a large household due to having many offspring. The current generation has around 10 children of various ages to the current head of the house, and some of the children already have children of their own. The Wildford household is known as an old noble house, but they are also in politics with 8 of the 20 council member seats for the 6th district belonging to their family. The family has taken care of the district and has helped it prosper quite well. They also have a handful of their family members in the Empire Guards and a few in the Royal Knights. Izuku just stored this information away and picked the young child up. "Let's see if we can find your family. Do you remember where was the last place you saw them?" Izuku asked, and the child said near the center of town, but he has been trying to find them but got lost. Izuku nodded his head and they headed towards the center of the festival. Izuku mentioned for his guards to keep a distance so the Wildford house head and family members wouldn't recognize them, since a few of them are in the royal guards and might have met them before. After about 5 minutes of walking, they soon arrived near the center of the festival area. Izuku saw the middle tower area where people were dancing around and creating music. Izuku had the young child on his shoulders with Leon right next to him. They had stopped and got him a cotton candy from a stall to occupy him while they looked around. After about 4 minutes of looking around for his parents, they didn't find them. As such, they moved to a location where there was a police box. These police boxes are used more commonly during festivals or large events but aren't manned during the rest of the time, since people could call for help or go to the station. The boxes are meant for quick places to stop at for situations like a lost child. They arrived at the station, and right as they walked in, a man's voice called out, "Nathan, where have you been?" stated the voice. They all turned towards the vice and saw a man that wasn't very old but wasn't young either. "Dad," called out Nathan. Leon picked Nathan off of Izuku's back and placed him on the ground, where he bolted to his father. The father hugged his child and just scolded him for running off, but told him that he was glad he was back. The father looked up and saw Izuku and Leon. "Thank you too for bringing him back. Where was he located at?" he asked after he introduced himself as Seth Wildford. They explained that they heard his cries for help near the lake and found him in the bushes after searching for a few minutes. The heir to the Wildford household thanked Izuku and Leon, and the young boy asked for a picture with them, which they agreed to. After a few more minutes of talking to the Wildford, heir thanked them again and told them if they ever needed help in the district to reach out for the Wildford house and they would do what they could. The conversation came to an end and they all separated. "Well, that was interesting to end our day," Izuku said as he looked at Leon. Leon just agreed and then leaned in quickly for a kiss, which he turned into a deep one. "Did I ever tell you how much I love your sense of justice and caring?" Leon said as Izuku just blushed hard due to the unexpected kiss. Yes, you have," Izuku stuttered out. They decided to call it a night and started to head back to the car to return to the military airport so they could leave for the night. This was how one of many dates that Leon had planned came to an end. They arrived at the plane and soon were on their return trip to the palace. Izuku just snuggled with Leon in a chair on the plane, since Izuku was small enough to fit right onto Leon's chest and not take up too much room. Izuku was enjoying the start of the dates but knew the fun had to end one day, and he was right when he received a phone call several days later from someone from his past. Jurin, the info broker from Japan, called him up later that week and asked to use his IO and had a strange request. Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.